Hello.
This is
the Queen G22.
Untitled.
And you are listening to
Scene Podcast.
Welcome to the Scene Podcast.
Yeah. Hey,
say,
it's the Scene World Podcast. Him, me, us, this is the thing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
Wow, we're
totally forgot about that almost.
Yeah. Right? Probably did it all professional last time without me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you didn't answer me, and we had a time constraint because I want to make 2 episodes per month. So I was like, all right. So
I'm not upset. I like Martin. I'm cool with him sitting in.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's either you, Martin, or Dennis, or me, kind of. Or
all 4 of whom are very capable of doing a good podcast. So
Right. Yeah, well, starting off which, we have a bit more oomph on the server side now. We are now lucky customers of DreamHost, and and I was actually surprised when I uploaded the MP3 and Ogg Vorbis files. They were like within seconds. I was like,
Nice.
Oh my god, this is so much faster than the European servers we had before, which is interesting because the hosting is in California, and I'm very far from California. But despite we are on a shared hosting, which is supposed to be slower, it's actually much faster. And we didn't hear any complaints from DreamHost yet about the amount of traffic we are causing. So, and
I'm sure DreamHost can handle our traffic.
Oh yeah, pretty much. I mean, they are number 1 right now in the world when it comes to homepage hosting. And I mean, I spent an hour with them last year telling them their sales rep what we are, what we do, how much traffic we have, and they were like, yeah, we are fine with that. Come with us, no problem.
Also huge props and thanks to Chris Loinberg, who who was the main guy behind the original incarnation of our homepage, and who kind of came out of retirement to kind of give us a hand with this, because we were kind of tripping over our own butts on this.
Yeah. That's true.
So yeah, couldn't have done it without him.
True.
He gets a raise.
Yeah. Together with Martin, they actually set through and made that possible, which is pretty nice. Because it's pretty much complex nowadays, we have so much other services on the web space next to the homepage, and then we had to update everything, and so it wasn't easy, but hey. Well, at least it went better than for other people, because our last guest, Semtron 5000, she actually is in the same situation where she wants to put up a new website, and actually that doesn't go very well, she told me. So when I emailed her that the podcast episode with her is released, the email actually bounced back because of missing MX entry in the domain for homepage delivery. So if you are one of her customers and emailed her and you didn't hear back, perhaps wait 2 weeks or so and email her again, because right now her email delivery is in the limbo. And I know that because we talked on Discord the last 4 days. So she's actually working on getting her web stuff together. Yeah. And that is actually why in the link list of the last podcast of the podcast description page, it's actually saying coming soon in brackets for the homepage, because the homepage is not up yet. Yeah. Anyway, that's about it. But for today, before we talk about the news, we actually have another pretty famous guest, and it's a YouTuber called St1ka from Portugal. Consuelo Tordo. And he actually came in the picture for us 4 years ago when we did the interview with Quenelle God from France, Fonzie.
Right.
Yeah, we did the first English interview with him, and Gonzalo actually did the second English interview with him. And interestingly, while everybody was waiting in 2020 for the game to be released, he made a documentary, 4 parts. And the last part actually had all creators of the games talking not so nicely, except two about Fonzie. And I think the documentary was called What Happened to Paprium, and it actually went pretty successful. And yeah, well, so he was the other guy next to us, actually doing a lot of content regarding Paprium.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So in a minute we will talk to him. It's a pretty relaxed, frank, and straightforward interview, conversation, talk, whatever you want to call it.
Sweet.
Yeah.
In the meantime, we got some news. There's actually quite a bit of news in the last. Well, okay. So I don't know what you guys talked about last podcast because I wasn't there.
I mean, you can look at the link list there. You can see what we talked about.
I could do that. Yeah, that's the thing I could do. Let's do that right now.
I mean, you have a list there with the news. It's not
acting like
deal.
I pay attention to what goes on here. I got to listen to these things. I got so many of these downloaded on my freaking phone, on my podcast app. Let's see. Okay, blah 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 blah. Shoobity doobity. Oh, Star Trek. Okay, cool. So none of these things were talked about last week or last 2 weeks ago, I guess. All right. Well, let's start off with. So there's another SID chip replacement. This one's called the SID Kick Pico.
Oh, okay.
This is based on the Raspberry Pi Pico. So there are so many. There's a GitHub page that will link in the podcast description. So it actually emulates dual SID chips. So it's either a dual 1580 or 6581 rather, or an 8580. And it's based on the ReSID emulation.
Nice.
And also FM emulation.
Ooh. So that means OPL2, OPL3, ad-lib sound?
I guess so, yeah. I guess so. It says it also emulates the SFX sound expander, FM. So I don't know how the SFX sound expander works, but that's what So that's that thing. I gotta throw my spectacles because I'm old. So that's the thing. I love the fact that there's like all these like different SID things. I've still got this thing. This C64 has my SID effects in it with a 6581 R4 AR and an 8580. There's a video on YouTube where I reviewed that weirdly.
Nice.
I've got another one sitting over there. This is the SID effects still in the box. I got that one for ostensibly for my 128 rather. But at the same time, I've also got, and I don't know where I put that. It's over there. I've got an FPGA SID solution that I actually got specifically for the 128 because the 128 it works well with the SID effects, but in certain locations it kind of chokes on the stereo SID bit, like it doesn't like it in certain memory locations. Which is something I ran into when I was first messing with the SID effects years ago, and the designer mentioned, oh yeah, that's a problem with the 128. But the FPGA SID fixes that, so that actually works with the 128. I have not hooked it up yet. It's been sitting there for months. I really have to spend some time and hook that all up and try it out. But there's so many SID solutions.
Make a video about that. That would actually be a good idea for the YouTube channel.
That was the idea, yeah. I got that back in, I probably want to say like October, and it's just I just haven't had a chance to do much with it. But yeah, I love the fact that there's so many SID solutions, because a couple of years ago it was kind of like
you only had the Swin SID, and that was
right.
it.
Right, and that wasn't that wasn't a great solution. Like, it worked, but
I liked the Ultimate Swin SID from Hungary because it had a better sound capabilities, and you could firmware update it.
Right.
Really nice.
But some of them had issues with stuff like the paddle stuff.
Exactly, that was actually the first one that supported paddles. Exactly, that's what I wanted to say. Yeah, and therefore also mouse support.
Right. I love the SID effects. That thing is amazing, because even when you have it not doing stereo SID, like, I've got mine set so that it does put out stereo audio. Left speaker is the one SID, right speaker is the other SID. So because the one is the 6581, one's the 8580, you get like a stereo effect, because it's different. It sounds differently depending on which side you're listening to. So
slightly different, yeah.
Yeah. It sounds really cool even when you're listening to non-stereo audio, which I love. And then also you can add, like, the stereo thing, and then I've got the right there that I'm putting out, the Ultimate 2 Plus, which also has a emulated SID on it. So I can set it up to be triple SIDs. Because I can set the SID effects for a regular SID, and then SID number 2, and then set that to be SID number 3. And granted, there's like 3 songs ever released that make use of 3 SIDs, but it sounds cool when you actually do it. And so
I mean, you have 9 voices. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds. There's some Gaetano Chiomo, I think the guy's name is. If you do a YouTube search for him and just search for 3 SID, you'll find stuff on there. That stuff sounds amazing. 9 voices going all at once. It sounds bitchin'. Now the FPGA SID has 2 built in, and from what I understand, the emulation, again, I haven't hooked it up yet, but from everything I've heard, it sounds pretty freaking good. I'm excited to try it out. But yeah, that's but now we have another option, the SidKick Pico, and I don't know how good it sounds. There are some videos on YouTube. There's ways to build it, I guess, so you can make your own. But there's also, like, I guess pre-made boards that you can kind of plug it into. There's a configuration tool, stuff like that. So, I love the fact that there are so many different options now, aside from just the Swin SID, which was not a perfect solution. So yeah, that exists. And while we're on the hardware topic, over here on in the 8-bit resurgence world, the CMD FT2000 and FT4000 has been reverse engineered. So they've now built a new one, and I've seen, before I saw this bit of news, but I just found this now when I was doing my search before we did this. But I had seen some things for sale, maybe a week ago, online, like cases and motherboards, from PCBWay motherboards. And I was kind of confused because, I knew that the FD 2000 and 4000 had been reverse engineered because that one dude was making them on eBay a couple of years back.
Yeah, but Commander Kang, but wasn't there controversy that
there were controversies
actually that he got devices for repair, and actually instead of repairing them, we're using parts from them to.
So the controversy that I heard, and I don't want to say that this is absolutely true because this is kind of hearsay that I saw people arguing about on the internet at the time, was that sometimes he would get if you sent in something to get fixed, sometimes he would hold on to that for an extraordinarily long period of time and try to reverse engineer it. But I also heard that if you purchased one of his hard drives or floppy drives. So like his FT2000 or 4000 clone, or his LT kernel clone, or his HD 40 or whatever clone. If you got one of those, they were rock solid. They were amazing. And if you were buying something from him that was already kind of, he had already engineered and already, knew how it worked, then you were fine. Just don't send him anything.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. That's exactly what I heard also. Yeah.
But so it had been reverse engineered at some point, I guess. And now someone else is doing it. And I don't know if this is licensed. I haven't watched the videos. There's a 3-part video series on reverse engineering.
I mean, that's the question. If somebody like Commander Kang already did FD 2000s and 4000s, why would you need somebody else doing the same thing?
Okay, so I can almost guarantee that his were not licensed. These are marketed as CMD FD 2000 and FD 4000. His were what the hell were they? Instead of LT kernel, they were Rear Admiral, I think, and he had the Fire drive and the Thunder drive instead of the FD and HD. The good products, but again, I don't believe that they were licensed. And the thing is that with CMD, and we're talking about Jiffy DOS, we're talking about the HD and FD series. All that stuff still exists. Like the people that designed that still own the copyright to that. So if you want,
the company's doing PC stuff now, but they're still around. Yes.
Right. So if you want a Jiffy DOS, right, you want to get it licensed from them because you want to compensate the people that designed the thing because they're still
but Jiffy DOS is easy. There's only one person having that license, and that's Jim Brain.
No, there's other people that have it now too. He's not the only one. Yeah, there's a couple of places that now do it.
Which is interesting because Jim Brain, as I saw, released update for the Jiffy DOS. So all those updates are independent?
I don't know if they're independent, but I think that different sellers have licensed the rights to sell Jiffy DOS. Now I don't know if the update is a Jim Brain specific thing or if that's an update to everything that then goes to all the other licensees. But there are other licenses.
I should try to get him on the podcast. I should contact
that would be amazing.
Jim and ask him if he would be interested.
Yeah, Jim Brain is the author of one of my absolute favorite pieces of software, which is the Z128 text editor for the Commodore 128. I lived in that thing for like 5 years. So yeah, I'd love to talk to him. But
let me see if I can get a hold of him.
Yeah. So, but yeah, there are. So now they've reverse engineered the FD2000 and FD4000, and I guess you can build your own now. In addition to the fact that they've also reverse engineered the 1581, and I'm seeing new cases and motherboards for the 1581 popping up all over the.
Yeah, but you mentioned that.
I know that. I'm just saying that in relation to the fact that we're getting this new stuff that is reverse engineered and now available for use, which is awesome. I love that.
And now I want the same for the 1541.
Yep.
That's what I'm saying since years.
No, you know what I want? I don't want the 1541. I want the accelerator. The accelerator drive, right? It's just the accelerator.
Yeah, it's called accelerator for you guys. For us, it's called the Oceanic.
Yes. The accelerator or the original Enhancer 2000 with the 1541 ROM, because they are rock solid. Like you've mentioned before, when we do Gamescom and we need long term, drives on all the time.
We are using all Oceanic drives.
Yes, yeah. Because they're built for that because they the power supply isn't in there. It doesn't overheat. It's not
Yeah, the reason why it doesn't overheat is actually pretty simple. It's a metal case.
Yeah.
It's actually working as a heat dispenser.
It's a lot like this thing. This drive for the Amiga. This is a 3.5-inch drive, but it's that all metal case around it. In fact, this isn't Oceanic drive.
Okay.
But they're awesome drives. I wish I had one. The closest one I got is again that Enhancer 2000, which I love.
They got regulated switch power supplies, which is actually pretty awesome if you consider they are from the 80s.
Yeah. Like I said, I wish I had.
There are no drive killers. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I had one. The closest I have is, like I said, that Enhancer 2000, which is a rock solid drive. I love that thing. And I've got the original. I sent you one, but it was one of the newer ones that had the because the first ones they made had the Commodore 1541 ROM, so they're 100% compatible.
It's the same for the Oceanic drive, by the way.
Yeah. But later on, they had to change it because Commodore got butt hurt. So they had to put their own ROMs
it's the same story for the Oceanic drive.
And they're not 100% compatible. But this one, because it's got the 1541 ROM, it is 100% compatible.
I mean, we are using it for running SceneWorld, and SceneWorld on anything.
Yeah, so. SceneWorld's very forgiving.
I I wouldn't say it's forgiving. It was designed for that in mind, actually.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, it's very forgiving. Depending, you can have running on all kinds of drives because that's how it was designed to run. Yeah. So next news before we don't want to get this running too long. There's a new. This was last month, so it's not brand new, but there's a new Ghostbusters game for the C64. It's fan made.
Ooh.
So this was made by. Excuse me, one moment while I become old again. This was made by David Izon. So at first, apparently, initial footage was shared in 2021. And then people thought it was abandoned. But earlier this week, the author of the game, David Izon, released a demo. And he said it's still a work in progress, that it's not polished, that the fun factor will probably only last 60 seconds, but that he hopes people like it. So it's not finished yet. It has additional floors on the Cedric Hotel, and features an end screen that dramatically announces Gozer the Gozerian's arrival. So you can download the ROM file. There's a Dropbox link to where you can download that. We'll probably put in the actual.
If it's a ROM file, so it's a cartridge.
Let's see.
Because otherwise it would be a disk image, if it's for the Commodore 64.
I'll tell you because.
Because if it's a ROM file.
No, it's a D64.
So it's a D64. I mean, that's actually what people always say, like.
Oh, that's what I'm saying.
ROM files for the 64, like, dude, in 99% of all cases, it's a disk image or a tape image.
Yeah, right. Well,
but ROM files you only got if it's actually a cartridge.
People don't know things. It's just, they see old, they see files that work with a retro emulator thing, and they're like, oh, it's a ROM file. Whatever. We understand. We get it. But it's so you can find that. We'll actually I'll put the link in the description to I found this on my favorite news site ever, the Oasis BBS. So we'll link the site.
So wasn't that the Australian?
Yeah, Australian?
I think so.
Okay. Well, either way, I'll link the website. I'll link the info, the page from the Oasis, because they've got a good rundown of it. They've got a link to the video on YouTube. Perfect. And they've got
they are pretty good. They are pretty good in covering stuff.
I love them. They're one of my favorite news aggregators. Them and Vintage is the New Old.
Yeah.
So I'll put that in there.
And that's not just because I'm also publishing news there from SceneWorld.
Oh no, our SceneWorld stuff's on there all the time. Yeah, I see that constantly. So the C64 OS, we've talked about this before. This is a thing that exists. Gregorio, I don't know how you say his last name. Nazu. It's a C.
Yeah. I will never forget his Twitter, now X post, where he says, like, so I made a break for a couple of years, and I'm surprised to see SceneWorld still around and publishing Discmac issues. I'm like, wow, thank you. We are finally being recognized by one of the creative guys.
Yeah, well, so he's put out this C64 OS. It's an operating system for the C64. I have not played with it yet. I would love to. It is. I'd love to have him on.
A couple of times already.
Yeah, I'd love to have it on because it's well put together. There's a lot of things it can do.
I can try.
Yeah. He is. It's well thought out. It's well put together and it's well supported. And as of a couple of days ago, there is now a preview of a Wikipedia client for it, which uses
why don't you try it out if you would like to try it?
I'll get around to that eventually. It's just right now it's an expense that is not necessary to me, if you know what I mean. But
I mean, Wheels wasn't also necessary for me, but I also got it.
Well, see, Wheels is one of those things that that back in the day when I was using my 128 regularly, Geo's 128 was something that I actually used. Geo's 64 versus 128. Geo's 128 is usable and workable. It's good.
I mean, I used Geo 64 for years. So
Geo 64 it's not. I used it too, but then once I used 128 Geos, it was like
never used 128.
Blew my mind.
Geos.
Yeah. Since then, I can't use 64 Geos anymore because it just seems so slow and
not
hobbles.
with the super CPU, which is actually why I got it.
And that's where Wheels comes in handy. That's where Wheels comes in handy. See, I used Geos with the 1581 and 512 the 1750 RU. So you had that RAM disk and the 1581 with the 128 rather. You've got the RAM expansion. You've got the 1581, and on the 1571 you've got burst mode. So it's super fast.
I mean, you could also burst mode on the 1581. So
I know, that's what I'm saying. But the 1581 is pretty quick anyway, even on 64 with that.
Yeah, but still the burst mode is really
burst mode is crazy fast. Yes,
I know.
And that's what I'm saying. Like with the 1571 and the 1581 in burst mode, and the 1750 RU, and the 2 megahertz 128, and an 80 column screen, Geo's 128 kicks ass. Now I've never tried it with the super CPU. I would love to. If anyone would like to send me a super CPU.
I mean, they go around for like $4,000 or something on eBay if you ever find one. Between $1,000 and $4,000.
Hey, someone sent me a 1581, so if they're and that thing you can't find them for less than $500 anymore. But either way, even hey, I'll borrow a super CPU and I'll send it back to you. But I would love to use that, but that's where Wheels would come in because Wheels was specifically made for the super CPU, correct?
Yeah, well, it was supporting it, but yeah, it also worked without.
Right? Oh, did it? What was the one that worked with it? That was only with it?
Clips from
Wings.
Wings from Protovision. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think there was also one called Clips, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Wait. Am I wrong? Let's see. Wings.
Clips, I thought was a Z80 thing.
Clips. I'm mistaken. No, you're wrong. So Clips was actually a C64 OS for this, especially for the super CPU.
Okay.
So that was Clips. So
what's the one I'm thinking of? That Z80 OS that runs on almost everything.
And now let's see what Wings is. Okay, Wings is actually so Wings is actually made for 1581 and IDE 64.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, the IDE 64.
Yeah. So that was not done especially for the super CPU, that was actually clips.
Mhm.
I mean, it's interesting because those pages, those projects are like from 24 years ago, but the home pages are still up.
Although if you go to what is wings, it tells you, it gives you a 404.
So this is clips.
Mm-hmm.
And
everyone at home, he's sending me links in the chat. You can't see that.
Yeah, but we put that in the podcast description. And this is Wings OS.
Yeah, I'm looking at Wings OS. If you go to what is Wings, it tells you not found. Also, a media library is coming soon. Tutorials is not found. Programming is not found. Simple index is not found.
Well, like I said,
anyway,
those home pages are like super old.
Yeah, but we're talking about.
I'm actually surprised that anything is still up there. To be honest,
we're talking about C64 OS, however.
Yeah,
which you can find at c64os.com.
Yeah,
and the big thing about C64 OS is that unlike Geos or Wings or whatever or Wheels, those were graphical operating systems, so they used like bitmaps to show everything, whereas this is primarily text-based, although it's pretty enough to where you don't really notice it.
And also, interesting thing is, Clips is actually the first thing that is an operating system with graphical interface in color.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And this guy too, Greg Nasu, he's also put out quite a bit more. Like if you go to the site, the C64 OS site, and this is something I love, he's put out a Commodore 8-bit buyer's guide, right? That was last modified in September 2023, and it looks like it is very similar to. Remember these things? As I stand up and walk away from the screen, where the hell did it go? There. Yeah. Remember these things?
Not me, but
no,
I'm in Europe.
I used to love these things. They came with my C64, and in it would have like all the cool things you could buy, software and hardware.
Oh no, I didn't have that in Germany.
Okay, well this guy on the website has kind of made this again, but with modern stuff. So you can go into
that. We mentioned that already.
Yeah.
We mentioned
in fact,
that already.
I think you can even get it printed. It looks like.
You mentioned it already.
Yeah,
I remember
that.
I'm
going to mention it again though because I love the fact that because when I was a kid, I used to love this. I used to love looking through these and being like, I want this eventually. But of course, all this stuff now is, you're not going to find a voice master anymore or half the stuff that's on there because the promenade. You can find one, but they're super expensive now. Things like that.
If you find something on eBay, it takes like 10 years, and then it's super expensive.
Yeah, but this guy now has done this, and you look at it, it's like, oh, there's the Epic's Fast Load Reloaded from the future was 8-bit, and oh, there's all these different types of SD2I devices, and all this cool stuff that is modern, the Pi 1541.
But as I said, we are repeating ourselves. We did that a couple of episodes ago. Do you really want to repeat all that thing again?
Because it's worth mentioning. It's worth people knowing about.
We mentioned it already.
I'm not going into in depth about it. I'm just saying that it's there. Either way, so this guy has released now a demo, an early build of the Wikipedia client, which uses the OS networking stack, which is slated for a future release. So there are some bugs in it, but it exists and it's there, which is awesome because that is a thing that one of the things I love about Q-Link is that it exists and the chat works and all that stuff. I don't know if people can see it. It's a Wednesday, so the chat thing is on there today.
Did you actually ever answer the guy?
I did that day. Anyway.
Yeah, did it publish or did you not? Okay.
Yeah. So, but one of the things that I wish it could do is, the original Q-Link, you could go on and see news and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I wish that the current Q-Link, you could go on and read like a text rundown of news aggregate websites, or Wikipedia or something. And that's not something that they're doing because because they're not trying to make Q-Link Reloaded, a social networking thing for people. They don't want it to be like a web portal for C64.
I know.
So they're not putting that kind of functionality into it, which is understandable. But putting it into the C64 OS means that your C64 now has the ability to do stuff that you can use it. I can go sit down and read the news for the day on my C64, which is that novelty that has been gone for a while, but I really, really miss.
Nice.
Anyway, that's the end of my rant on that. What do you got?
Well, I mean, for once, there's actually announced that there will be a Marvel vs. Capcom collection coming out soon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which is actually pretty neat because I love the Marvel vs. Capcom games on the arcade. It's pretty neat to use, Street Fighter against Marvel comic characters and let them fight against each other. Also, not only did they have awesome graphics, but also the music is amazing. So the whole feel of Marvel vs. Capcom, totally loved that. Those machines were actually Neo Geo arcade machines. So super nice to see that this franchise especially is getting some love soon. And I mean they had the Street Fighter collection that was pretty strong, so I guess Capcom will make it right this time again. Let's hope about that. Yes, and also other news, if you have it in your Steam library, the game Arctic Combat, which is actually an online survival game.
Right.
So somebody has announced on the Steam forums.
Is that like an FPS?
Yeah. Right. Okay. So somebody announced on the Steam forums that he's actually working on a new third-party server to revive the game.
I can't find it on Steam.
It has been removed from the Steam store.
Oh, it has been. Okay.
But if you own it, if you're lucky and you own it, then you can play it again soon.
I wonder if there's any way you can get it off the Steam store.
Didn't look deeper into that because I already have the game in my library. So yeah, and also Starship Troopers Terran Command, so the real-time strategy game, released their latest DLC called Urban Onslaught, and it's actually pretty neat because they are the same creators that also did the Terminator real-time strategy game release, which is nice because RTS games have been very, very has been a genre that many publishers didn't touch, especially no AAA studios. But since last year, there are tons of AA studios getting licenses for IPs like Starship Troopers or, as I said, Terminator, and actually making kick-ass games with those IPs. It's pretty neat. It's pretty awesome. And also, you mentioned it briefly last episode in the news. We mentioned Star Trek Resurgence, and now, after many complaining in the Steam forums, they actually released a patch today to get Steam achievements added to the game. Yeah, because they originally announced no achievements. It used to be a total Epic Store port. And that's it. but people were complaining so much, like, "Hey, you have achievement on the PlayStation release. Why don't you copy those achievements and put them in the Steam release?" And it looks like they did. They released a 163 megabyte update today, which is rumored to add achievements. I didn't try it yet because obviously I'm sitting here now recording a new section for the podcast with you now. But that's about it. So they're actually listening to the users.
I'm looking at the Starship Troopers game that you were just talking about, and I get from this, you know, the thing with Starship Troopers that I don't think a lot of people realize, or maybe they do, and it's just kind of fallen on deaf ears or whatever. Like I'm looking at this, and it's like it looks like a strategy game where you're fighting the aliens.
That's true, yeah.
But wasn't this game or this book, the book and the movie was like an allegory for like the people were the bad guys. We were essentially we were space true. Nazis. Space Nazis.
No, that's not true. That's not true. The movie was actually you were fighting the aliens. You're remembering it wrong. I know it because I got the collections of the 5 movies they made for Starship Troopers. I got the collection from eBay, from Amazon recently. So.
Right.
You're actually totally getting it wrong, but never mind.
I'm looking it up. Hang on a second.
There was nothing about Nazi, not so ever. Nope, not totally.
Hang on a second. We're gonna have to cut this part out because I'm reading, but.
I mean, the famous phrase in the movie
Starship Troopers explores themes including patriotism, authoritarianism, militarism, colonialism, and xenophobia. Verhoeven interpreted Heinlein's novel as a fascistic, nationalistic, totalitarian in favor of military rule, something antithetical to the director's childhood experience during World War II, and used Starship Troopers to deconstruct and undermine these themes. Iconography inspired by the German Nazi regime and Italian National Fascist Party, led by Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini, appear throughout Starship Troopers as symbols of the United Citizen Federation. The UCF flag, bearing an eagle, resembles the Nazi coat of arms. Officer uniforms resemble those worn by the Nazi secret police, the Gestapo, including the insignia, and the infantry uniforms bear a symbol similar to Mussolini's black shirts. Neumer said that Nazi uniforms were used in part because the Germans made the best-looking stuff, but Verhoeven also wanted to use that aesthetic in an artistic way. Although some contemporary critics and audiences consider Starship Troopers to be an endorsement of fascism, Verhoeven said, "Whenever you see something that you think is fascist, you should know that the filmmakers agree with your opinion." Screenwriter Mark Varsenthal said the dangers of exposing the audience to an attractive fascism are necessary to lead them to the possibility of progressive politics. Other aspects of Nazi regime influenced Starship Troopers, from the architecture of Albert Speer to propaganda films such as Olympia. The first scene of Starship Troopers, an advertisement for their mobile infantry, emulates scenes from Triumph of the Will, including the dialogue, "I'm doing my part." Verhoeven cast attractive actors, described by Entertainment Weekly as conveying the Aryan ideal of beauty to seduce the audience into joining Starship Trooper society, but then ask, what are you really joining up for? In the novel, Rico is revealed at the end to be Filipino, a deliberate choice to make readers empathize with the character before revealing he is not Caucasian. Verhoeven chose to make Rico white to further satirize the fascist message. Further influence was taken from writer Susan Sontag's 1975 essay, Fascinating Fascisms, that identify key aspects of Nazism such as the cult of beauty, fetishism to courage, repudiation of the intellect, and serving the community at the expense of the self. So the whole thing was like a satire on that. I thought it did. I think maybe they took it a little bit. Verhoeven took it a bit more from went a bit further than Heinlein maybe did. But like, for God's sake. But like, look at the uniform in this.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Look at those uniforms and tell me that's not straight up.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, as I said, I know the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought I was under the impression that the movie was kind of a like a satire, kind of like on that. Like it was supposed to reflect certain things. Like yeah, the movie presents like we're fighting the aliens, but really we're the bad guys. Like the aliens didn't do anything to us. We're just fighting them because they're different.
That's not really how the movie works.
Or this bit of uniform.
Yeah, but then you could also say that some of those uniforms look like from the Empire from Star Trek. So
well, but the Empire from Star Trek, or from Star Wars rather, was specifically made to look Nazi. That was the whole point.
Like I said, yeah, well, that's what I said.
I mean, the bad guys were literally stormtroopers.
Yeah, as I said, Star Wars really had similar costumes. Yeah. Yeah, well, anyway, we are almost an hour for the intro.
Yeah, well, we got to cut all that bit out with the whole Starship Troopers thing.
Really?
Yeah, because I don't want to be talking about Nazis for 10 minutes.
Well, you mentioned it. I thought you don't want anything to be cut out anymore.
No. But I mean, that's not something that we need to be flagged
for. Okay. Anyway, one last thing before we close up. I wanted to mention the game Twilight Oracle because we mentioned it in the news a couple of times, and actually I got a review code for Steam and I played it a bit.
Yeah.
And as I know, in the last weeks, I spent so much time for the web migration that I didn't really had any time to make a review video. So I thought, as a good alternative, I would mention my opinion here in this news section, so people can timestamp it or just skip it out if they don't like it. So let's put it at the end of the news section. Okay. So anyway, it's an adventure game, point and click, from Cosmic Void, which we mentioned a couple of times. And he's actually already working on the next game that's coming out in July. So this guy is actually a machine releasing one game after another. And the reason why I asked for a review code for Twilight Oracle is actually the graphic style is pretty colorful and popping, and I really like that. His game that's coming out in July is actually in EGA style, but this one is more pixel modern graphic style, but very popping colors, as I said. And I mean, the whole game, the whole story is actually pretty amazing. So it is like you are playing as Leo, a struggling student, and you are able to breathe underwater, and you explore a desert island that you are stranded on. Well, rather said, being sent to because you are useless for society with 2 other students. So it's kind of, well, you are in a group there. So the story is pretty wicked, I would say. Yeah, so it's absolutely unique as a game, and if you like unique humor, a pretty unique story that you didn't hear before, good game mechanics, and very unique graphics, then this game might be for you. Which is actually also the reason why I got No Man's Sky, because of the graphic aesthetics in the first place. Yeah. And we mentioned that also, that a lot of people were disappointed because the game back then in 2016, which is 8 years ago, and they're still releasing regularly updates. Crazy for a game.
Big updates too.
I know, content updates, yeah. Anyway, just wanted to mention it here. So Cosmic Void is really a developer and a publisher, obviously, because it's indie. you really should check out if you are deep into the adventure game genre like me and you want to experience something unique. It's pretty awesome. So we will be mentioning the other game in July once the embargo has lifted as well.
Okay.
Right now, can't mention details because there's an embargo on it.
Right.
Yeah. Despite I already have a Steam key for it. Yeah. But sometimes games are released earlier for reviewers than for the public. So
Right.
Yeah. It's actually pretty neat, however, and I think I mentioned that last time, that a lot of old IPs is finding a successor for new releases. I mean, it's pretty telling that a new Star Trek game, adventure game, is actually coming from a studio that was created from the former Telltale games. It's actually their first product. And it's also somehow sad to see that many AAA IPs like RoboCop, Terminator, or Starship Troopers, which were big movies, at least in my childhood, and it also obviously in yours, because you are a couple of years older than me, and my major studios don't want to touch those IPs anymore. And so there are AA studios making a really good job on this. It's amazing. They are really good games, and it's making me feel like going back to those old IPs and being like in an interactive movie.
Right.
So it's pretty awesome. I mean, one thing that I always see in the forums is, especially on Steam, somebody from Germany, why is there no German voice acting for this game? And I'm like, dude, it's from a AA studio and from a publisher that doesn't have the finances to put money into making additional languages next to English. And like, I mean, my take on it is probably either learn English or stay away from it if you are so much into German voiceover. I don't know. For me personally, I really enjoy playing the Star Trek Resurgence game, because I mean, it's awesome because they actually hired a voice actor that is perfectly able to mimic the voice of Leonard Nimoy.
Wow.
Which is like, wow. Wow, it's like, wow. So, Ambassador Spock really sounds like Spock. Oh my God. Wow. And this means so much more for me than having a German voiceover. I mean, obviously as a kid and teenager and whatsoever, and I watched the German versions more. But I mean, when it comes to the movie series that came after 2008, I watched it all in English.
Right.
I never went back to German. So this voice of Leonard Nimoy, the English voice of the actual actor, is very much known to me, and it was so amazing that they actually found somebody to mimic his voice.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Like, wow, because Leonard Nimoy had a
very
voice
unique
that was
voice.
pretty unique voice. Yeah, exactly what I wanted to say. And they actually, the creators of the Star Trek game actually made an interview with the voice actor, how he manages to mimic the voice of Leonard Nimoy and stuff. We will link to that in the podcast description, but it's like super amazing, And I respect that more than having voiceover for Germans. I mean, I understand it's a cultural thing. We have this big translating and dubbing industry in Germany, like unparalleled to anywhere else in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you, for example, look in voiceovers for in translations and voiceovers for countries like Poland or Russia, they have one speaker speaking over all the actors.
Yeah.
For the whole movie.
Mm-hmm.
And in the background, you can actually still hear the English original dialogue. You know, that's how much money they put into localizing series and movies.
Yeah.
But in Germany, we actually hire people to make professional recordings, and you know, it's like crazy.
Yeah.
So anyway, my take on this is that those AA studios might not have the finances to do that. So anyway, having Leonard Nimoy on the rooster already for this game, and having him with his almost identical voice as in real life, it's good enough for me already. But
yeah,
I mean,
awesome.
I'm special. I'm one of those Germans. I'm used to speak English all day with you, with others. So
yeah,
for me, it's easy going. I understand that not everybody's fluent in the language, obviously. But hey, with the time passing, those minorities might get more a minority, you know, because Gen Z is learning it, you know, automatically already. So you're actually laughing, yeah, but that's how the Gen Z, that's how the last generation is actually called right now.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So basically born after the year 2012 or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. I do want to throw one more thing into the news here, which is that the VCF Southwest 2024 has happened, and the videos are available on YouTube. We'll throw a link in the description where you can check them out, that playlist.
We already had that.
Did you?
Last time. Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. That's an identical.
All right.
Because we had them as a guest in the podcast, so obviously when the videos were available, we mentioned that.
Oh well, that wasn't in the last podcast.
To that already. Yeah.
Well, that wasn't amongst the links in the last one, so.
No, it was the one before already.
No, this was the VCF 2024 was only June 14th, so we haven't done a podcast since then.
Let's see. I'm pretty sure we put
the videos were uploaded 4 days ago.
Okay, well, because
we've done other VCFs, but this is VCF Southwest.
Okay, Southwest. What I was talking about was St1ka, South California. Okay,
no.
Okay, so that's a different VCF. Yeah. Okay, nice. So many VCFs around the world.
I know.
Which is actually good. Keep the hobby up.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Southwest. It was held at somewhere.
Somewhere.
University of Texas at Dallas.
Awesome. Alrighty. So now let's jump to Portugal.
Mm-hmm.
And talk to the guy.
Pew.
Bye. Nice. Today we have another guest, and today it's actually Gonzalo Tordo, better known on YouTube as St1ka. Hello.
Pleasure to be here.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, interesting is you came in the picture for me at first because you did this amazing documentary about
Paprium.
What happened to Paprium, yeah? And I was like, woo! And interestingly, I don't know if you listened to the podcast episodes we did with Quenelle God known as Fonzie?
I might have listened to, because I remember listening to a bunch of podcasts and interviews he made, some in English, some in French. So I think it's possible I might have listened to yours, but I listened to a lot of them, to be honest.
French? You also know French?
I mean, I like to think every European speaks at least 2 or 3 different languages a little bit. So my French is very rusty, but I can understand it. And I can speak some very basic French.
Okay, I see. I never learned it. In school, we didn't have the option. So,
okay.
And my mom, when I was 16, so she was like, yeah, you should learn French or Spanish as a third language. And I was like, it would end up so broken that people would prefer using English with me, you know?
It's normal.
Because I know when I speak to foreigners that know German, that after some tries you fall back to English because it's usually better for communicating.
I've had the same issue with people who come to Portugal and try to speak Portuguese, and I'm like, we should just switch to English because I can't understand you.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Well, so interestingly, the thing is, at this time you did this video series, which is pretty impressive because in the last episode you actually managed to invite everybody that worked on the game for the final episode. And the thing is, at this time I already knew that the game would be released the following December, because if you heard the episode we did, 2 of them, you know that I had a phone call with his mom and actually had an email exchange with him. So, and the deal was, we are doing the first English interview with him for the podcast, and as part of the deal, I keep my mouth shut, not telling anybody that the game's going to be released.
I think the issue is, even if I did hear it, or if I would have heard it, I most likely would not have believed it. It was one of those cases where I only would have believed the game would have been out if I saw it on my mailbox, which I eventually did. But before then, I just wouldn't. I don't think I'd believe it.
I mean, I'm a bit of a hard guy, you know. That was before there was privacy rules in the European Union. So, using his homepage domain, I actually found that the homepage domain is registered at his parents' address, and then I found that to this address there is a phone number connected, a landline phone. So I actually was calling to my law insurance company, asking them how to proceed with this whole thing, because I paid $74 for Paprium, and of course the law insurance company told me the money is probably lost. But I was like, yeah, but I found this number 2 years ago, and I already spoke to her, where she promised he would call me back, which never happened. So I called her again, and I said, if I not hear back from Quenelle, I will call you every 4 weeks until I either get my money back or the game I ordered. So, and then I made a summary of the phone call and sent this as a letter to the address in France, making a deadline. And this shocked them so much that 2 weeks later, I received an email from China, from Quenelle, a long email explaining how he got ripped off by PayPal and stuff. And how
that old story.
he would send me the game, and he would do the first English interview with us if, on the other hand, I keep my mouth shut that I know the game is going to be released. And on the 18th of September 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, the game was released.
Yep, I I got my copy right on Christmas Day, I believe, or right before Christmas Day.
Yeah. He sent it with GLS in Europe, and and so I actually received an email 4 days earlier saying, over the weekend I'm reopening the store, and you receive an email to confirm your postal address, and then there you go. And I knew this would happen, and well, then we did the first English interview because Quinnell was like, I don't do English interviews, only French interviews. and I was like, no, you are doing an English interview with us. And before he did the English interview with you, he actually released a French video with one of his friends.
Yep,
and
I saw that one. I saw that one.
And I remember one thing that really pissed me off, that the first 2 sentences were in English. And after 2 sentences, they were like, okay, now let's switch to French instead. And I'm like, why, guys? Yep. Why?
Yep, I remember that.
Why?
But you know what's funny, though? And people seem to have forgotten. Peprium is supposed to have come out for the PlayStation 4 and Nintendo Switch. That was promised on the Kickstarter. There's been no updates. There was supposed to be a Game Gear port of Peprium, which was also on the Kickstarter campaign, which hasn't happened yet. There's the Super Nintendo game, which has been in development since the same year as Peprium. And there's the Mysterious Dolphin game, which you could pre-order, which I did pre-order, and there's been no developments as well.
Well, I guess it will all come to light in 7 years or something.
And you know the worst part is, I actually freaking love Peprium, the game.
I know.
I got the cartridge. I was ready to hate on this game. I started playing it. I loved it.
Right. Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. Yeah. I have to admit, I never finished watching the 2 hours with his friends because honestly, I couldn't stand reading subtitles for over 2 hours. I was like,
I used the subtitles, but it was just there was a lot of dead space in that interview. Like a lot of, like when you're being interviewed by your friend, the questions they're getting asked and the questions you're answering, it's basically just promotion, not really a proper interview.
Right. Yeah. But anyway, we are digging too deep already. Perhaps let's start way at the beginning. How did you get into retro gaming and into computers and console games? What was your starting point there?
I mean, I always loved video games, even as a kid. As a kid, my dad bought me an NES Famiclone because Famiclones were very popular in Portugal. And he also had an IBM MS-DOS computer for work, which I used for gaming, of course. And I just always really loved retro games and emulators and video. And even in the 90s, I would install emulators in my Windows 98 PC and play Game Boy games through an emulator and whatnot. But once YouTube became a thing and I started watching the AVGN, the Spoonie Experiment, and a few others, I just fell in love with the concept of a retro gaming YouTuber. The issue is, as I watched them over the years, I felt there was a disconnect between the stories they were telling and my own experiences, because all the biggest retro gaming YouTubers are either American or British. Nothing wrong with that, but retro gaming does not start and end at the US. Basically, there's an entire world outside of the US. Every story they would tell was pretty much the same baseline. It's the NES was super successful. The Master System and the Atari 7800 pretty much didn't exist, which in my country, the Master System actually outsold the NES, for example. The Super Nintendo was the king of the 16-bit generation. My country was the opposite. It was a Mega Drive. Then it was
interesting.
Then it was the PlayStation was great. The N64 was great. Nobody knew about the Saturn. In my country, the Sega Saturn outsold the N64 and was toe-to-toe with the PlayStation, with the PS1 for the first 2 years.
Wow, one of the few countries where the Saturn wasn't the underdog.
No, it was actually the heavy favorite. it's pretty much believed that the only reason the Saturn died in Portugal was because it had no choice, because no games were coming out anymore. Like my story was very different from the stories I was hearing, and after a while you start getting frustrated because it's always like, oh yeah, the Master System is like the NES but not as good. The Sega Saturn is like the PlayStation but not as good. The Mega Drive is like the Super Nintendo but not as good. I'm like, hold on a minute, guys. There's an entire world of games you people have never even discussed. I've never seen an American YouTuber talk about, like, I don't know, Psychic World for the Master System or Ninja Gaiden for the Master System. Like, there's a whole slew of games you never look, because you only tend to look from an American perspective. So that's why I created the channel. And as I began to make videos, I kept getting more comments and more people who were like from different countries, and they were like, I really like your videos because you give us a different perspective. But I would also like if you told like the my country's perspective. Like, maybe I'm from Greece or from Italy or I'm from Argentina or from Brazil, and at some point I was like, you know what? You make a good point. Like, I was so frustrated with countries, with YouTubers who never go outside the US or Japan, and I was technically doing the same, just focusing on my country. So I started reading up on Brazil's gaming history, which I speak Portuguese. I've done videos on Greek gaming history, on gaming history throughout the world. I've done, honestly, I don't even know which countries I've done, but I've done a lot of countries at this point. And at some point, that basically evolved into, what if instead of focusing on just on countries per se, I just focus on games, but like games that people might not be aware of because maybe they were very popular in Russia but not in the US, or very popular in some country but not here. So that's basically how I became like the guy who looks at games people nobody ever heard of, but give or take.
But before the recording, you hinted that YouTube is not your day job.
No, it's not my day job. I have a proper day job, and I do this after hours. So always at night or always during the weekends.
Oh, why is that? Why didn't you go into YouTube full-fledged?
2 reasons. For one thing, YouTube does not earn me enough to make a proper living. Like, some
promotions.
Yeah, I keep getting offers for promotions, but I don't feel comfortable doing them, to be honest. Like, I didn't make the channel for, okay, obviously the money is a good thing. I love getting the money, and I'm not gonna lie, but it's not why I made the channel. And I keep getting like promotion, like, oh, do you want to promote NordVPN? Do you want to promote Magic Spoon?
Cyber Ghost.
Yeah, and I'm like, I kind of don't want to, really. Yeah, the money you guys are offering is really good, but unless I'm desperate for some reason, I kind of don't want to. So I do this I basically make my money off of YouTube ads, which varies a lot depending on the video, and Patreon, basically. And hopefully those two will be enough.
So you are more like the modern vintage gamer.
Yeah. He also has a day job and he doesn't do promotions. And it's just like, if I get a product that I'm like, you know what? I'm in. I like this product. But it's like,
and also he is Australian, so that defeats your logic. You said earlier that most retro YouTubers are American.
Yes, but he doesn't talk about video games for the most part. He talks mostly about the hardware, or like, let's take this
the Impossible port.
Yeah, or something like, let's like this popular video game, this very popular, and see the technology behind it, which is very interesting. He's a great YouTuber, but it's like, oh, how did they make GoldenEye? How do they make Perfect Dark or whatever? And I'm like, this is very interesting, but it's still just GoldenEye or Perfect Dark. It's not exactly a game that people don't know or aren't aware of.
Right.
But to be fair, I literally just finished watching an MVG video right now. He just launched one on the Xbox hardware, on the Xbox hard drive, which I really enjoyed. But like I said, it's the Xbox. It's not something like. Did you know that the Dragon Ball Z was the killer app for the Sega Saturn, for example, which it was in my country? Like, it's very interesting technological history, but it's not like focused on obscure parts of video game history, in my opinion. Although, again, I really love his channel.
And I mean, since we are doing this Scene World scene world thing, there are some regions in the world that are very hard to cover. Yep. I mean, for example, before this whole political disaster happened, we had Russia, and talking about the computer history and games and demo scenes in Russia, it took us 10 years to find somebody who would actually do the interview, speaking about what happened in their region. Or same with Spain. It's surprising. I have Facebook friends from Spain who are in their 20s and are into video games and YouTube and stuff. They don't speak a single word of English.
Yeah, I'm like, very common.
How is that even possible?
Some countries like Spain or France are they're historically not very.
France changed though.
No, did it? Okay.
I mean, if you look at our podcast, we have a lot of interviews.
Spain, there's still a lot of resistance to learning English. I'm afraid.
Yeah, and Mexico is also one of those regions where it's like.
Although with Russia, there's now a few Russian YouTubers who do their videos in English. I really like Russian video game comrade. He does videos in English, and he has made excellent videos on the gaming history of Russia. Like, I've learned that in Russia they would write books based on video game stories, like a novelization of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the NES, for example, something like that. And I thought that was super interesting. I recommend you check out his channel. It's very good.
Yeah. So you have to tell me that later. I have to.
Oh, absolutely.
Have to remember that. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like there's a large gap on things,
If you want something that's really hard to research, try researching African countries and their gaming history. Now that is difficult.
Yeah.
I made a video on like video games around the world, and I think I only covered like 3 or 4 countries in Africa because I literally could not find anything. I tried, but I just couldn't. I dug as deep as I could.
We covered esports in Ghana.
That's cool.
spoke to that one person that started the whole industry in the country.
Oh, that's awesome.
And we also had 2 people from Jamaica.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
And one of those people is actually the only person researching and preserving all the video game history of Jamaica.
Oh, wow.
So we got that covered. Yeah.
Okay, that is pretty cool. I didn't know that. Although I'll admit, I tend to focus more on the retro gaming aspect and not so much the modern gaming.
Yeah, we try to do everything with Scene World, where some friends told me we shouldn't because it's watering down the focus on the podcast because we are covering everything, and I'm like, we don't have a focus. We just cover everything,
Understandable.
Yeah, that's a concept behind the show, and I guess it's working for some reason because if you look at who we got as guests, it's amazing, and but it sometimes it takes 10 years or longer to convince a person making this interview. It's incredible sometimes, but
if it helps, I believe I was relatively quick to accept. I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why we say Scene World, Or for example, we also made an interview with the Game Preservation Society in Japan,
nice.
And the founder, despite he knows English, because he's a French person, he really would do interviews in French or in Japanese. And I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work. So we actually had to wait until the pandemic was in control. So the American speak person would move back to Japan to be able to make this interview for the Game Preservation Society.
You should have replied. You should have replied, "We'll do German. Take it or leave it."
Yeah. Anyway, so that's actually the thing, being a YouTuber or podcaster or whatever, people don't understand the extreme complexity you sometimes have to go through to actually convince people. I mean, with you it was easy because we have been in touch because of Paprium, so
yeah. I remember.
Or asking you was just an email away, and the possibility that you would say yes was pretty high.
I believe like Gwenael is uncontactable again. I think.
Pardon? I didn't get that. What you said?
I believe Gwenael God has gone uncontactable again. He's gone like off the grid once again.
Good question. I actually didn't try calling his phone number.
I gave you the phone number, but I would be very surprised if it were still in service. Very surprised.
I mean, I can tell you he did a Kickstarter update 2 weeks ago. So
okay, that's something, I guess. That's something.
Yeah. So
I just want my goddamn dolphin game, though.
So at least he's keeping that kind of promise. I mean, even if he just updates it like every 6 or 8 months,
Jesus,
you know, but the degree of information is very little because they're very secretive, you know.
Yeah, I think he has this fantasy of being like this genius who never says anything, but then out of a sudden you get like this really great game or this perfect game, which I really enjoyed Paprium, but it's got a lot of flaws. Let's be honest here.
Yeah, I mean, the flaw is actually that the copy protection is so crude that, or let's say so invasive, that I actually had to get myself another Mega Drive to be able to play it.
Or like the fact that if you jump kick, the enemy AI can't defend against that. But then you have like the beat 'em up on the Mega Drive with the most content I've ever seen, with like an RPG mode and so many different endings and characters. Like it's great. I love the game, but it's like a flawed masterpiece.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I had to do was actually opening it and clue that
take out the little metal piece, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
same here.
I actually didn't decide to remove it. I decided to glue it back, actually.
Oh, okay. I took it out, but I put it inside the box. In fact, my copy's right there. You can see my game right there with Paprium.
Nice. Yeah, but the thing is, he claims that it wouldn't cause any harm to leave it as is. But if it rattles in a wrong way, it actually could shortcut components on the PCB. You know?
Yeah, I read as much. I opened it as soon as I could. And the issue is, like, the screws it uses are not like regular screws. You need a bit screw. So not everyone has that. I didn't have that. I had to go to a friend.
Yeah. You need the torque.
Yeah, the torque screw. That's it. You need
exactly. Yeah. Unfortunately, I had one, so I did that. My problem was getting a Mega Drive where it wouldn't crash.
Yeah, I was lucky with mine. Mine worked fine apparently.
Yeah, well, either that or you need a Mega CD, and then it would work also. But
thankfully, I do own a Mega CD.
Okay. So you're actually having a version 1 of the Mega Drive with a Mega CD.
And I gotta say, the AI buddy in the Mega CD version is surprisingly good for a 16-bit system.
Okay.
Like your AI buddy is smart and it's actually really useful. Which, if you consider that Capcom tried to do the same with Final Fight 3, and the AI buddy in that game was pure trash, like it's really impressive. I think.
Yeah, I mean, Final Fight is a different story because if I don't remember it incorrectly, for the Super Nintendo, they actually made 2 versions of the game, right?
Yeah.
Because
but this is
one
Final Fight 3,
character was missing.
Not the first one. It's for the third Final Fight game. The third one has an AI buddy, not the first one.
There was a third?
Oh yeah, there was 1, 2, and 3 for the Super Nintendo.
Personally, no. But I didn't mean the AI buddy. I mean I mean, they made of the first version. They made actually a Guy edition.
Yeah, Final Fight Guy. Yep, they did that.
Because they didn't have enough space to put it in the original cartridge.
Yep. Back then, ROM used to be expensive. ROM memory.
Wow. Yeah. Nowadays, I wonder why nobody did a re-release.
Yeah, I know there's been a few re-releases of Super Nintendo and Mega Drive games. And while I like those personally, I prefer supporting modern games for old systems. So you're like Peprium, but other games as well. I have a pretty large collection of modern games for the Mega Drive, for example.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's another interesting story. Pierre Solar. I actually read a post of the person who designed the PCB, and he said that the original design from 2010 actually causes the cartridge to destroy itself within 20 years.
Yep.
Each time you play the game, it's degrading a bit more.
Yep. It's a good thing I got the second edition, which supposedly it doesn't correct, but minimizes the issue.
Right. What I did, I mean, it's not possible anymore because Quenelle shut him down. But there was a guy on AliExpress making reproductions with a modern design that doesn't degrade at all.
Okay, yeah, that's preferable.
So,
but not surprised Gwenaël would shut that down. That's very, very on brand for him.
Which is quite interesting because, as we know, he has deep roots into China. So he actually knew how to stop this guy. Which is actually, for people not having such deep connections in China, it's very troublesome because normally China is very protective of their own people when it comes to shady businesses. But Quenelle is Quenelle. You know,
the man has ways.
It's quite interesting because I figured the seller is actually pretty unique because, you know, Asians, how they tick, they are very, you know, they are like pretending to be friends, like, yeah, the first time we are business partner and the second purchase onwards we are friends, you know. And he was the total opposites. He actually wrote in the listing, he wrote, "Stupid people, don't buy here."
That's great.
And I'm like, wow, he has balls, insulting your potential customers from the get-go.
That's actually pretty great.
I was like, wow.
But I'll admit, I have little to no experience with Chinese manufacturers, sellers.
Really? You never bought anything from China?
Nope, I don't think I've ever bought anything from AliExpress or Alibaba or any of those websites. I don't think I've ever done it, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah, well, I mean, I do it when you actually can get stuff from AliExpress that you can't get elsewhere. For example, there is a cartridge for the Mega Drive with all Street Fighter 2 releases ever done on the Mega Drive in one cartridge. And that's pretty neat. And somebody actually made the hobby port of Metal Slug for the Mega Drive as a physical edition.
Oh, wow.
And I also got that. And it's super funny because at the beginning of the title screen, it actually says, "This game is not for purchase." So
a lot of modern game developers and a lot of game modders really don't like when you buy or repro cards, for example, or whatever. They're like if it's a mod, don't buy it. If it's a modern game, buy the official release, not the repros.
But the thing here is, if you actually go on the developer's homepage and want to buy the original Mega Drive release, you can only buy a ROM file.
Yeah. because they make very limited production runs more often than not.
Yeah, but in this case, I actually read that he didn't make any runs at all.
Oh, okay.
And only offered the ROM file or a Steam version.
Ah, okay.
And I'm like, I don't need a Steam version of a Mega Drive port.
Yeah.
I can get the original port of the arcade version on Steam. So my only option is to buy it from AliExpress.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, which is so weird because if you are a developer, you are totally missing out on a potential sales option. I never understood this thing, but if you even write inside the game that it's not for purchase, he's really serious about not making a physical release.
Yeah, it's like I know a lot of them, they can't even legally sell them, but even despite that, they still don't like it if you do repro cards. I know I've seen that quite a lot.
I actually had this one story that there is a version of New Rally X for the NES, which is actually like a bootleg, you know, and you can only get it as a reproduction. And at this time, you couldn't do the customs declaration from home. You actually had to go to the customs office in your city.
Damn.
And I actually had to open it, and they were watching me, confirming that it's actually inside the parcel what is on the declaration. And in a fraction of a second, I was sane enough to put my thumb over the reproduction unit's letters on the label.
Wow.
Because the seller actually wrote it on the label. I'm like, oh my God, no. You know? And I'm at the customs office, you know? And I don't know how it is in Portugal, but here in Germany, those people have more knowledge sometimes in what is legal, what isn't, than you would believe. They actually have a database of value of rare NES games and crap.
So, really?
So yeah. So because I bought my NTSC NES from Venezuela, and the seller in Venezuela, he was like, "Oh, I will just write in the declaration $10." And I'm like, I wouldn't do that because St1ka isn't stupid enough to believe that. And of course, they were like, "We don't believe that the console was that cheap."
I'll admit. I think for the most part, the Portuguese customs doesn't care. If they see $10, they'll accept $10. I think.
Right. Yeah.
I think they don't care.
Germany's unfortunately a bit weirder.
I like just the other day, I got one of the Nintendo DS Castlevania games stuck in customs, which is worth like 3 digits. And I just wrote like, oh, it's €10, and they accepted it.
Wow. Okay. Well, lucky you. I mean, the thing is, I expected the problem because the original price was $45.
Okay.
And I told him I'd rather pay the value-added tax for the real value than having it stuck in customs and arguing with them until I get my cartridge or it's returned to sender. So, but he didn't listen to me. He wanted to do me a favor, and by doing this favor, he actually made it worse for me, you know. And he sent it by FedEx, so it was actually not. He would actually not communicate with the customs directly, but with FedEx, and they communicating with the customs and then feedbacking to the seller. And Venezuela and Germany is in a very different time zone, so it would take weeks until they finally got an agreement, and I could get my parcel. But anyway, let me ask you. how did you get into the Peprium story? I mean, were you one of those pre-orders? And
yes.
I also would like to know, how did you manage to convince everybody to talk negatively about Quenelle? I think in all those people you interviewed about the game, there was only one or two people that didn't speak badly about Quenelle.
Well, first off, yes, I was one of the people who pre-ordered the game. Mostly, I think I was on the Sega 16 forums, and the Peprium threads have become legendary because the first thread had over 1,000 pages. The second thread, I don't know, I haven't checked in years, but probably hundreds of pages as well. So there was a lot of information there. But the issue is, a lot of it was disconnected, and we just didn't know what was happening. So, and at the time, a lot of those developers were actually on Sega 16. So I contacted a few of them. They said yes. And the ones that I did contact would also give me the Skype contact names for the other ones who weren't on Sega 16.
Wow.
And getting them all to talk was very easy because everyone wanted to talk. It required no convincing. And as for getting them to talk negatively, here's the thing. At no point in my interviews did I ever ask anything negative about or imply or try to. I kept all of my questions neutral, and I just let the other person speak. So anything negative that came out of those interviews was from the actual developer and not from me, because all of my questions were like neutral as possible. I was like, oh, what's it like working there? How do you feel about the delays? What's the game about? Can you tell me more about the game? What's it like working with Winael? What was it like working with Tulio? What happened when Tulio left, for example? Like, I was very neutral. I never tried to attack or imply anything, and I was trying to keep it factual. And everything negative or positive that came from the actual person.
I remember very little positive, very much negative.
There are about 2 people, who were positive. The rest was very negative. Yeah, a lot of people did not enjoy the experience, or at the very least have a lot of have some bad memories or bad experiences.
Yeah, I remember especially the person that did the community management. He was saying he actually had problems paying his rent because from one day to another he wouldn't get his salary anymore. It was like, holy crap, how is that even possible?
I remember that.
Wow. And here's the thing, I don't really understand it. There was this French woman that would do PR that he would also stop paying. But when the Kickstarter was coming to fruition, he rehired her.
I'm guessing there was money.
and she was willing to pick up the torch and continue working as a PR person.
I remember that.
And that was like, he ripped you off once. Why would you do it a second? Why would you?
I was never able to speak to her, sadly, but I did try to send her an email once, but she didn't reply. But
yeah. I mean, the thing is, they had to communicate with us because we were like the torch that flamed to help promoting this Kickstarter, and I was the only German still willing to make an interview. All the other German press was like, Peprium, we will never touch this topic ever again.
Which is kind of funny because when Peter Solar launched, a lot of the mainstream gaming press promoted Peprium. They were like, "Oh, there's a new Mega Drive game out." And when Peprium, earlier known as Project Y, was announced, again there was a lot of press coverage for it. So, but Watermelon destroyed any goodwill it had with its community, with the press, with everyone, basically. Like, it's a very interesting story because all of that goodwill was just destroyed over the years, basically.
Yeah, and I explained to him, Germans, we can forgive, but we won't forget. That's actually the thing. So, because I had connections in the press and I asked my connections there, everybody was like, no way. No way. Even I even knew the person working for content for the biggest German YouTuber regarding gaming. This is like no way. Yeah, so we actually had to communicate with Quenelle and his press woman, PR woman, because we had to coordinate how we would go about releasing it and stuff, promoting it. And interestingly, it turned out to be a bit of a shit show because,
as always,
because once we released it, one of our former editors actually complained that we gave this guy a platform. But I was like, hey.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I believe that there will be a new game from Watermelon coming out. I believe it'll come out, and I believe it'll be yet another flawed masterpiece. Now, which project is it? I don't know. Maybe it's the Game Gear Patrium. Maybe it's the PS4 Patrium. Maybe it's the Super Nintendo RPG. Maybe it's the Dolphin game. I don't know.
I believe actually, the golfing game got a name, kind of AMB 96.
Oh yeah. I remember. That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, something like that. Yes. Yeah. I believe something will come out. I just don't know when or which one. And I believe it'll be good. But again, it'll be a flawed mess, but good.
I guess the Game Gear version of Paprium will be released because we spoke with the composer.
Okay.
In the podcast, we made an interview with her, and she already made the music for the conversion.
To be fair, the Paprium, I think it was Paprium. The Paprium soundtrack was done by a composer, and then none of it was used. Like they just did an entirely new soundtrack where I interviewed the original composer for Paprium, and turns out none of it was used. So that's also a possibility. Oh wait, sorry. It was for the Super Nintendo game. The guy made
just wanted to say
for the Super Nintendo RPG, and then turns out none of it was used. And they remade an entire new soundtrack, and for all we know, this one won't be used either. For all we know, who even knows at this point?
Is there any other game like that where you have your toes into, or was Paprium your only investigating YouTube endeavor?
It was the only one. Every other modern game I covered, be it for Mega Drive, NES, Game Boy, everyone was super ecstatic that they were getting coverage. So Paprium was the only one. And to be fair, I hope to never make another video like Paprium again. Because, like, if we join all three parts, not counting the review, not counting the interview with Fonzie, those three main videos were probably the most miserable videos I've ever made. Like, it was just such a negative experience. It's just hearing hours upon hours of recorded audio, of people complaining, saying how it almost ruined their lives, how much they hate it, how much they regret it. It was miserable. It was miserable to research, miserable to record, miserable to hear, miserable to edit. I hope to never do another video like that again.
That's super interesting, because as a YouTuber, as a watcher, that was one of the best things I've ever seen on YouTube.
I've heard that. Yeah, a lot of people still love it, but I hated doing that video from beginning to end, honestly. I prefer more upbeat videos, happy stuff, not so much the whole dredge that it was that those three videos were.
Yeah. And I remember, I don't know what publication, but there was one publication saying, so Paprium isn't vaporware after all, or something. I don't know if it was Huketo or whatever.
No idea.
But it was like, so suddenly a publication saying like, okay, we take everything back. The game finally made it. Yeah.
I think one of the writers who actually wrote that went on to to create Time Extend, the website dedicated to retro gaming news, I think, because it was most likely Nintendo Life, because he used to write for that, and he formed Time Extend, I believe.
Well, I'm actually on another game like that. I'm actually working on perhaps getting an interview about Drift Stage, which is also a very troubled game, but it's for the PC, but it's with retro. It's with retro graphics.
Okay.
And it has a similar troubled history like Paprium.
I think part of the reason of what made like Paprium or Pure Solar so interesting is because, in my opinion, Pure Solar kickstarted the idea of making new games for retro consoles, because as far as I know, making modern NES games, modern Game Boy games, whatever, it just wasn't a thing. It didn't exist. And I think Pure Solar and Little Project Y, which became Paprium, were the games that solidified that, yes, this could be a real thing that happens, and yes, you can make money off it, which both games proved it was possible. So I think I think those two games are special because of that. Even though personally, I think Pure Solar is mediocre at best. To be honest, I've played the game. It's got a lot of issues. Paprium I like. Pure Solar, it's got a lot of issues.
Yeah, right. But here's the thing: I don't like RPG to begin with.
Okay, I love RPGs, but there's a lot of problems with Pure Solar.
Well, the sad thing is, despite being very successful, the money spending really caused the game to hit the wall and crash. Yeah. I mean, not the game, but the company in the end.
The end, the issue with Watermelon was it was poorly managed. I think Tullio was a good manager, a good director in terms of finances, and just in general a good manager. But it's pretty clear that the fact he was sharing power with someone who didn't really care about the expenses and just would focus on the video, they would clash. And of course, I think once Tullio left, there was no chance that that Watermelon would be properly managed from a financial standpoint. But other studios have proven that you can have a profit while making Mega Drive games. There's a French company called Neofit who made Demons of Astapor, Astabros, and they're profitable as far as I know.
Or Rogue Studio, which we interviewed
Rogue
recently.
Studio. There's also Bitmap Bureau, which makes Xenocrisis.
Yeah, which can be profitable. Which we also interviewed. Yeah,
you can be profitable. It might require it requires a bit of some constraints, but it can work.
So you don't buy the eBay stole $30,000.
No, I try to buy. I don't believe it, to be honest. I've heard PayPal can withhold your money, but not for several years. I think there's a lot of it there that just doesn't seem legit, especially because it's my understanding that this happened twice already, maybe 3 times.
Yeah, twice. With his American and his French account.
At some point, you gotta start asking questions and see that the common factor is Gwenael and not really PayPal. In my opinion.
Which makes you wonder in the first place, if a company ripped you off $30,000, why would you use PayPal a second time?
Exactly. Or when he said that the Chinese mafia were after him. It's just at some point you got to start asking questions and just doubting everything he says. It's just I've stopped listening to the guy and just okay, hopefully some new game will come out.
So you didn't invest your money in the Kickstarter?
No. I only ordered the Dolphin game, and I'm I don't even own a Game Gear, so I wouldn't be able to play the Game Gear Paprium games. So it's whatever.
So you really spent $248 on the AMB 96 game? Whoa.
I think I ordered the normal edition, the regular edition, which was maybe 60, I think. Not the collector's
edition. I went full in.
And to be fair, I doubt I'll ever see that game. I doubt it.
Perhaps it's the second Paprium. Suddenly. it's there. Are there any rumors what games it could be?
Honestly, I haven't listened to Watermelon in years. I've tried to stay away from Watermelon, to be honest. Although it is funny, I remember that Gwenael really did not like my documentary, and
he didn't like it.
He didn't like it, and he wanted me. I believe he either wanted me to take it down, I think, or like post corrections or whatever. And I'm like, I'm not gonna touch the documentary, man. It's done. I will never touch it again. If you want, we can do an interview and you can like expose your case, but the documentary stays up.
That is how the interview happens.
Sort of like the art director of Peprium, he's Portuguese as well. Luis, thank you. He was the bridge between me and Gwenael.
Which is interesting because he's considered a friend of Gwenael.
Yeah. Like he played several betas over the years, and it got to a point where people were accusing him of lying that he never played those betas. So I think he also just chose to like once the game was out, chose to stay out of the limelight, I think.
Oh, yeah. So was it a financial success for you to make this documentary? I mean, did you get any gain out of it?
Honestly, I mean, each video did like between 30,000 and 10,000 views, which for the time was really good for me, but it didn't exactly. It's not a lot. It's not a whole lot of money. 30,000 views from YouTube, and at the time, I literally made zero money from YouTube. At the time, my channel was very in the red in terms of money making. So it was just something I did for the channel and not really for the money. So I would say no, not really. It definitely didn't pay the hours spent making those videos.
So now let's talk about what do you focus on your channel then?
Well, these days I just do something that makes me a lot happier and a lot more normal, which is basically I just talk about video games in general. I like pick a theme, do videos on several games, or sometimes I still do documentary style videos, but not so much investigation, more from a historical standpoint. Some things I tend to focus on is I try to focus on games that are not common or not commonly discussed or are usually fall to the wayside. I focus a lot on modern games because I really enjoy modern games for retro systems like modern NES games, modern Game Boy games. I focus a lot on bootlegs because I think bootlegs have gained a really bad reputation over the years. And while a lot of it is deserved, people don't know that there's also a lot of good bootleg games. I sometimes like to talk about games that I've never seen discussed. Like, for example, on my 80 Games Around the World video, I was very happy to finally talk about the Sword and Fairy RPGs, which is like the greatest RPG series in China, and like nobody knows what it even is in the West. Even though it's like super huge in China, it sells millions like every year or whatever. And they've had TV shows and manga and comic books and anime shows, whatever. So I've gained a bit of a reputation of someone who like talks about weird games or unique games or games they never heard of, like or like documentaries about like lesser known stuff. Like I was very happy to make a video on the Wizardry series, which is one of the RPG series that created RPGs as we know it. So I don't really know how to describe my channel other than I'm that weird guy who talks about weird games, I guess.
I mean, I had another Portuguese but Brazilian guest earlier, Shirinea, and he actually also focuses, but he focused more on obscure Brazilian versions of games, like the Brazilian version of Battletoads and stuff.
Oh, yeah. That was for the Master System. Although it was made in the UK, it only launched in Brazil, but it was incomplete. So like halfway through the game, you can play it, but it's clearly unfinished.
Yeah, well, it's not really unfinished, but because it crashes on some third-party consoles, the second world's actually skipped.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Perhaps watch that video. Yeah.
I should check it out. I should check it out.
I've done videos. In the video, he describes how he goes in the emulator after making a dump of the physical cartridge. First, he had to learn how to make dumps of physical cartridge in Brazil, and then using an emulator, and then going into the game code, and a pretty impressive story.
That's amazing. I've also done videos on like Brazilian comic books of Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, and other properties, which is funny because they're always filled with extreme violence or extreme sex or both.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that. Super interesting.
Those are actually funny thing about those. A lot of the creators from those comic books, the artists or writers, actually sent me private messages thanking me for making those videos, because not only did I talk about the comic books, I also discussed what it was like working during that time for those comic books, which also wasn't easy. They were underpaid. Sometimes they were not paid at all and had very tight deadlines. So they thanked me for that.
Wow. Yeah, you are making the world a service, right?
I try. Yeah. I try.
I mean, you have potential with your documentary and investigating the Peprium backgrounds. You actually could do this more. But if you said you hate it, you probably wouldn't.
I honestly really hate it. I could do it, but I don't want to do it. It's just so much fun. Like, okay, here's a weird game. Let's see if it's any good. Oh, it's good. Let's talk about it. It's just more fun, to be honest. At some point, you realize, like, once you start investigating things, a lot of times you're going to uncover things you don't want to uncover.
Ooh, yeah. Well, it's. What is your plan moving forward? I mean, do you have the plan actually to make YouTube a living at some point, or will you stay at your day job?
I don't plan on leaving my day job, to be honest. I think YouTube is too unstable. Like 1 month you could be really good, the other month you could suffer terribly, and there's no guarantee that 10 years from now YouTube is still going to be a thing, or that people won't leave for another platform, or maybe the algorithm is going to change and I can't keep up with the algorithm. So I created my channel about a couple of years ago, it really grew. It exploded. But I've always kept the idea that sooner or later it's going to end. Like sooner or later, I'm going to run out of topics, or I can't keep up with the algorithm, or my videos are just not that interesting, or whatever. I know that sooner or later it's going to end. So I don't really bother with that.
Now the question, of course, is left to ask: what do you do as a day job?
I'm a data analyst for one of Portugal's biggest marine conservation and marine research facilities, basically. So
okay,
it's basically I'll look at spreadsheets all day and see data and try to see the patterns and stuff like that.
So you are a data writer.
Yeah, more analyst, but sure, yeah, I guess, yeah, also that, yes.
Not very exciting, isn't it?
Honestly, I really love it, to be honest. I really enjoy it. There's something very satisfying about a job where you can just put on some headphones, listen to music all day, and just work with numbers, and you can just turn off your brain. Just look at the numbers. Like when I'm working with numbers, my brain is turned off because I don't need to think. Like calculating numbers is easy for me. So it comes naturally. So the day goes by very quickly for me.
Wow. Okay. For me, it's the total opposite. I hated math, and I totally despise numbers.
Here's the thing. I didn't like math at school, but it's like once you had to introduce like trigonometry or like formulas, right? Or matrices, like formulas where you can't really understand what you're trying to achieve here. When it's something like, oh, it's a simple equation. Yeah, equations are fine. I like equations. They're fun. I like calculating. That's fun. So those I enjoy, and that's basically my job. And thankfully, I also get along with the people there. So I really like what I do, basically.
Interesting. Now we didn't talk about. Do you have any role model YouTuber, any creator you look up to?
That is a very good question. I mean, when I created my channel, there were a lot of YouTubers who inspired me. There was like the Spoony Experiment. There was some small YouTubers like Implant Games, who sadly he stopped, he quit. Spoony Experiment also quit actually several years ago. But like those were like the channels that I really idolized. These days, I feel like I'm just doing my own thing, to be honest. So and I rarely watch gaming YouTube channels anymore. I know I just said I watched MVG an hour ago, which I did, but most of my YouTube feed these days, it's like cooking recipes or something like that. So a lot of it isn't really related to gaming anymore. So I don't know, like I don't even watch that many gaming YouTubers. I know the other day I was recommending the video where it's like 8 YouTubers pick 8 hidden gems or whatever, and I didn't know who any of them were. Like I didn't know the main channel or the guests on those channels. So I was like, okay, maybe they're small channels. No, a lot of them are like 300K followers, 500K followers. I'm like, who the hell are these people? Why have I never heard of them?
I see.
Clearly, I'm out of the loop at this point. I'm just
yeah, makes sense. I'm also not listening to podcasts anymore as much since I'm doing our own here.
Yeah,
because you are more focused on making your own stuff than listening to others.
Basically, the retro gaming YouTubers I talk to are the friends I've made while I was small, because again, I don't really know what's going on anymore. And the new YouTuber friends I've made are not gaming related. Like one of my best YouTuber friends is an anime YouTuber, so completely different region or segment of YouTube.
Nerds stick together.
Yeah, something like that. Yes.
Quite interesting. So in the end, everybody's just cooking with water, right?
In a way, I guess. I'll admit that I still have some issue watching a lot of YouTube channels, because I feel that a lot of them are still doing the same thing that got me frustrated and got me to make my channel in the first place. Because, okay, that video I just talked about, where it was like eight retro gaming YouTubers pick 8 hidden gems. None of the games they picked were hidden gems. I'm sorry. They were all very well-known games. It's like oh god, it's like what's that Mega Drive game where one of the kids transforms into various into a knight, into a ninja.
Wow, I don't know this one.
Hold on, I know I can. It's damn it, I should know this. It's made by Sega of America and everything. It's damn it, I can't remember. Kids something. Damn it, I can. But it's like they were all really popular games, and I'm like, oh my god, I feel like I'm still stuck in 2012. So I don't know. It's like I got very frustrated with a lot of I'm trying to remember the game, with a lot of like the way a lot of YouTubers make videos. It's just got me frustrated. I think the game is called Kid Chameleon. I think I can't remember right now the name.
Don't know this game. Yeah, well,
it's an okay game, but I wouldn't call it a hidden gem. It's very well known in my opinion.
One thing that really annoys me to the maximum when I watch younger YouTubers, like 800 subscribers or something, actually, before we started interviewing you, I looked at the part of How Not to Cheat Todd Rogers' Guide by the Fallen Stars YouTube channel, and she mentioned that the first mass selling video game console was the Atari, and I'm like, pardon me, it's called ECS. Atari is the company.
Yeah,
you cannot strip away the name of the console and just call it the Atari. You know?
I think there's something even worse. Like, I think the fact that a lot of retro gaming YouTube is done by either people who only experienced one thing, usually the US, or only read or only know what they read off of Wikipedia or other YouTubers. I think that there's two major issues. One, a lot of gaming history is being erased. If you want, like, I don't know if it's happening in Germany, but I've seen people in Portugal, the UK, or Brazil who think that the gaming history that happened in the United States is what happened in their country as well. Like, for example, a lot of new kids think that the video game crash was worldwide. No, it was just in the US, just the United States. And even then, the Commodore 64 was selling well, and they were selling a lot of games for the Commodore 64 during the video game crash. But there's a lot of gaming history being erased, and it feels like opinions on gaming history are getting streamlined. It's always like, oh, Mario's better than Sonic, and you're crazy if you think otherwise, or nobody cares about the Amiga. Nobody cares about. It's like, no, people cared about the Amiga. Like, there were like millions of hundreds of different stories and different events, because there's hundreds of different countries. There are so many countries. Each one had their own history. I get that the US is one of the biggest markets. I get it, but it's not the only market. It was a chaos of hundreds of markets with their hundreds of stories, and that everything is getting streamlined into a single story.
And also, it depends who you ask. When I did an interview with Paco Portello, the guy who made the first computer game with a cutscene called now I forgot the name. Now I forgot the name of the game. I mean, it's called The Flea, but now I forgot the full name of the game. It's called Bookaboo the Flea.
Okay.
And it's actually a game from 33, and it was the first game having a cutscene. And he actually, when I interviewed him, he said that the video game crash happened in Japan and America.
Oh, Japan as well?
Yeah, and I was thinking, like, Japan as well during the interview. But of course, you wouldn't argue with a legend of video game history in Spain, you know. But in this moment, I was like, wait a second. Japan didn't have a video game crash, did it?
I don't think it did.
Yeah. But I think the Japanese thing was probably a slip thought or something. Okay. Because, interestingly, because you mentioned it, and that is why I say it, the video game crash of America was actually the golden era of video games in Spain.
For example, yes, there were a lot of video game companies who were formed in Spain, like Dynamix, for example. That was a very popular Spanish video game company. And like I said, the Commodore 64 actually flourished during those years. So it was actually the American console video game crash.
Exactly, yeah, because people forget that the Commodore 64 was not only a personal computer, but also a game machine.
Exactly. It had hundreds of games.
Yeah.
And I've seen one big YouTuber who once made a video like good games in unexpected places. They're like, what does that mean? So those unexpected places, it's like the Commodore 64, the Amiga, and I'm like, why is a good game on the Amiga unexpected exactly? Can somebody explain that to me?
Yeah, I mean, the theory probably comes because a lot of games were actually ported from the Atari or vice versa, or you have bad arcade.
Oh, I don't deny the Amiga had terrible arcade ports, but the Amiga also had a very good library. There's a lot of good games there as well.
I know,
especially RPG, which I love RPGs. There's a lot of good RPGs on the Amiga.
Yeah, well, let's be honest. Arcade ports were probably not.
No, those were not
one of those, with a few exceptions.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there was Hugo the Troll.
Oh yeah.
Which actually came from Denmark. And what people actually don't know is that I mean, it was a phenomenon that actually spread across the globe, even in Portugal, obviously, and also in Germany.
I've done a
on
video
cable
on Hugo.
TV. And they actually used real Amigas for the game.
Yep, I know. I've done a video on Hugo, and I once had, and during my 80 Games Around the World video, I had a person from Denmark choose a game to represent his country, and he chose Hugo, and he explained how Hugo led to the creation of Hitman 47. Because it was the same people who made the game. The folks who made Hugo also made Hitman.
Interesting, didn't know that.
Yeah.
Such a contrary of genre, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. So
wow.
I'm actually really proud of that video because there's a lot of like interesting gaming history from a lot of countries in the world. Admittedly, I would have liked to have included more Africa, but Africa is really hard to research.
Here's an interesting story. There are rumors that there are only 5 copies left of the Hugo game cartridge for the C64.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I'm actually one of those owners. I own one of those 5 cartridges.
Oh wow! Okay.
Still left, and I won it in an eBay auction. And and the highest bidder was $120. And I said, okay, 70 is my maximum. So, and the seller was actually a Danish student who needed money desperately. And he had 2 copies of those 5 cartridges. And he actually was planning to only sell 1 copy, but in the end he sold me the second one because with 70 I was the second highest bidder. And the other cartridge was actually going to a Danish preservation group. So they actually opened the cartridge, dumped the cartridge and stuff, and did some research on it. So
it's kind of funny how a game that only has 5 copies sells for so low, and yet.
But that was 2010 or something.
Even then, I mean, you already had very expensive games in 2010. I mean, by that point, I'm going to assume that that I don't know, Chrono Trigger was worth at least 3 digits, I believe. So, but yeah, it's kind of funny how a lot of times the games we consider rare are not rare. It's just there's a lot of demand for it. Where the really rare games, nobody wants it because nobody knows they exist, basically.
The Game Bay 64 had a lost games section, and one of those lost games was actually the German version of Sega the Horrible. And once I bought a Geos book for the C64 from German seller, and the discs were missing, which means the book is actually worthless because you don't have the programs that come with the book. So you cannot really use the book, right? And so his seller told me, okay, as a compensation, I'm sending you a disc box full with discs, copies, originals, just random stuff. And one of those discs was actually the believed non-existing Sega the Horrible in the German original edition.
Okay, now that is interesting.
And I actually emailed the developer of the game. Unfortunately, the manual is lost. There's no digital version of the manual anymore. So just at least the game is preserved and known to be existing. Yeah.
Okay, that is pretty cool, but yeah.
So those are probably the 2 rarest games I have.
Honestly, it's difficult to say rare because I have expensive games, but do I have any game that's actually rare? Probably not, to be honest. I mean, unless you count the modern Mega Drive games, I have some first editions of those. I guess there's that, but again, that's about as close as I can get, basically.
Well, as I said, it was by chance. It was just luck. How did I end up bidding on a Hugo cartridge? Was just that I asked a friend, a demo scene friend, and he said, like, yeah, I have a friend who is a student in Denmark, and he actually needs money. And next week, he's actually putting up his Hugo cartridges on an email auction. Would you like to participate? And 2010, that was like people would give you their collection of old video games for 30 euros, because it's not worth anything anyway. And I was like, what would the other people bid? And then I was like, 50 is probably too low, 100 is too much. So it was like 70. That's a good a good middle ground. And it was like, wow. So I was the second highest, and the highest, as I said, was 120. So they were probably thinking like, nobody is paying more than that. So we go all in. And nowadays that would be impossible, because
absolutely
somebody with deep pockets would say $4,000. Okay.
In fact, there's a common issue with a lot of like undumped betas or undumped games or canceled games are in someone's private collection, and they don't want to dump it because if they did, they think their game will be worth less, for example. So that's a common issue now.
Yeah, game
which is a bit of a shame.
Yeah.
And one thing you should know, I don't know if you're aware of this, but a lot of bootleg games have actually not been dumped yet. In fact, I've played the bootleg games that were dumped like last year, for example. Like there's and part of the reason for that is a lot of those bootleg games made in China or Russia, they had copy protection. So even if you try to dump it, you gotta try to circumvent their copy protection.
Interesting. And now, since last year, there is the knowledge how to work around that.
It varies by game because each game has its own copy protection. So the games are very slowly being dumped. Most are terrible. Occasionally, there's some really good games there.
I mean, there were some really nice games. I mean, I remember RoboCop 4 for the Dendy in Russia. They just used the RoboCop title screen, released a portion of the 3, crossed it, wrote a red 4 next to it.
But these are different. But because these are games created from the ground up. They didn't take an existing game and then made something of it. No, this was made from the ground up by pirate bootleggers. So you have like a Mega Man game made entirely in Taiwan, for example, or
that's interesting.
Or a King of Fighters game made entirely in China or whatever, and they play really well actually. So there's an entire world of bootleg, and just the other day someone posted me a link of a Chinese website which had like 100 bootleg games, all of them RPGs but untranslated, so I can't play them.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, there are some projects that were actually given up. I mean, there were several attempts to make an English translation of the Japanese version of Maniac Mansion for the NES, the Famicom version, and but they gave it up because of the limited space. You would have to shorten the words. So much that the game would be unplayable.
Wow.
And or to reprogram the memory map so much that you actually make way for the English translation that actually people gave it up.
I did not know. I mean, I knew about the Japanese version, but I didn't know about the limitation. But I guess it makes sense. I know that a lot of translations of Super Nintendo RPGs were cut like into half or cut short because of space limitations.
Interesting. So you learned something during this interview today, it seems.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I had no idea.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as I said, we try to cover everything. That's our thing here.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So it's somehow sad to know that there will never be another documentation from you about a lost game.
Probably not.
Because you did that really well. Yeah. But if you had the choice, is there anybody you would like to collab with? Any big YouTuber or something that you would say work with him or her making a video together?
I mean, that's sure, because again, I'm gonna revert back to that 80 games around the world video. That game also had several collabs because I contacted YouTubers from across the various countries and asked them, would you like to represent your country, for example? And so for Australia, I got Modern Vintage Gamer, for example. For Germany, I got an American, but an American who lives in Germany, who is from DF Retro, Digital Foundry Retro. I forget his name, but he's the main guy. Damn it, I forget his name right now. The main guy from DF Retro.
But he's not Norwegian, right?
No, he lives in Germany, but he's American. He's American.
Yeah.
Audie is Norwegian.
Oh, so it is actually Audie. Yeah.
No, it wasn't Audie. It was the other guy. The other guy. But I got him. I got a bunch of pretty big YouTubers from across the world for that one. So as for actually collabing with someone, I don't know. I don't really think of collabs much these days, to be honest. I made for that video because it made sense for the video itself, but it's not something I give a lot of thought to be honest.
I thought when we do this interview, you are like, I have big plans. I'm doing this and that and this and that. And
no. I just write down ideas in a Word document, and every once and again I go and read it, and then okay, this one's good. Let's do this one. I am very unstructured. My structure is a Word document with ideas, an Excel file full of video games, separated by system or like horror game, good game, hidden gem, bad game, bootleg, and then I just see where I can fit them.
Yes, actually another topic nobody from my knowledge covered, and that would be lost Telltale games, for example.
Lost what? Sorry?
Telltale games.
Are there lost Telltale games?
Yeah, because Telltale didn't renew the licenses in 2015 of many games.
Oh.
When they folded and recreated the company, they didn't renew the license. For example, getting a copy of Law and Order Legacies does cost 244 euros at the moment.
Damn. Okay, I did not know that.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and some games are actually lost.
Really?
For example, Minecraft, the story. The second edition with the newer chapters. You actually only can get a pirated copy because there are no codes anymore around.
I didn't know that, to be honest. I had no idea. I'll be honest. Like once Telltale stopped doing adventure games and moved on more into I'm gonna call it cinematic games, I guess, because they weren't adventure games anymore. I kind of stopped caring about Telltale because I like adventure games. So I got their 7 Max games, for example. But then and I enjoyed The Walking Dead as well. But The Walking Dead and those other games, they were not adventure games. They were like cinematic games. That's all I can say. Like you make a choice, but there's no puzzles to solve. So I'll admit I stopped paying attention to them after that point.
But that is actually at that point where they become famous.
Yeah, it is.
For their Telltale formula.
It is, but I didn't care for it, to be honest.
I mean, they have gaming elements, but it's more like quick time actions.
Yeah, I didn't. Those were the weakest part of the Walking Dead game, in my opinion.
I have to admit, I actually like that.
I like the game. I like Walking Dead, but I don't like those parts.
And I really loved it when Need for Speed: The Run was released, because it also has such quick time adventure parts.
I don't like that. I don't like the
Really?
quick time events.
Ooh.
I don't like quick time events.
It's actually the first Need for Speed game that I actually played from start to finish. Because I actually loved to have an adventure part in a racing game with a story behind it was absolutely amazing to me.
I mean, I did like Burnout Paradise, and you do have like a bit of a campaign in that one as well. So
right,
I get it.
So Telltale. So if now the question: if somebody like me made you an offer to make a collab and going into the bankruptcy and the history of lost games of Telltale and the rebirth of Telltale and the modern games of Telltale, wouldn't
probably not, to be honest. Probably not.
Okay.
I'll admit I prefer doing videos on like uncommon games. Here's the thing. Like I said that one of the issues I have with like YouTube or retro gaming YouTube is that it only focuses on the same stories, and part of the reason why I tend to make videos on so many uncommon games or common systems is to try and fight that. It's why I have a series on bootleg games, for example, because I want to fight the idea that bootleg games are bad, or why I try to cover so many games for systems that usually do not get covered, like the Master System or the PC 98 or whatever. Because again, I'm trying to fight the idea that or trying to show people that those games should be the systems should be explored. So I think the issue is I'm fighting a different battle, which is to try and expand the scope of retro gaming to get people to see that there's more to retro gaming than just the Super Nintendo, the Mega Drive, the NES, the Game Boy. And a lot of my channel is related to that, I guess. So that's basically where my motivations lie, or the type of videos that I try to focus. And I do that not by doing documentaries, but by making videos of here's 20 games. So check them out.
So Paprium burned you in a way.
It kind of did, yeah. It kind of did.
Yeah, I have to admit, I absolutely loved this whole social interaction with France, and Quenelle is a very, very special guy. I totally loved that. Having couple of phone calls every evening, discussing with him how to approach the podcast, how to mention the Kickstarter and so on. I totally loved all that thing. Watching your documentary, knowing that in the back of my mind the game will still come out at the end of the year. I totally loved that. I totally loved digging into history and talking to people involved. I was like, okay, I don't have to do that now because you did it, you know? And I was like, there's no point in doing it a second time because you did such an awesome job.
Thank you.
On that. So yeah. Now the question, of course, is in the example of Telltale, would actually people be interested in talking about the old times? Because
it's difficult.
Because people would probably be fearful about what the current Telltale is thinking, and all that stuff, and NDAs and all that stuff.
I think you would have a hard time getting people to watch the video too, because I feel that a lot of Telltale's audience, I'm not going to say non-gamers because that's incorrect, but maybe more casual gamers or people who do not go to YouTube to watch gaming documentaries. So I think you would have a harder time getting people to watch that or getting people to click on that, in my opinion, at least. Although to be fair, in a way, every video idea is good. It just depends on how you package the idea.
Interestingly, our strongest part is not YouTube. We just have 1,000 subscribers, 1,700 or something. Our strongest part is actually the podcast. So we have around 8,000 listeners per episode, depending on the guest. And it was actually so much that we had to change the web host. So since last week, we are actually on Dreamhost on unlimited, unmetered shared hosting, traffic-wise and stuff. And because before we had the problem that, interestingly, it was not iTunes but Spotify that caused so much traffic 3 years ago that our older web host actually shut us down for 12 days because the customers on the server were complaining that their site went down because we used all the used all the capacity because people were downloading the MP3 files of the podcasts like crazy.
Wow, okay. I did not know that. I really did not know that.
So that's really a big problem, and so actually, it's a problem if your hobby is too successful that is too big, and most sheep web posters were like, nah, it's too much for us. Go elsewhere.
I mean, in a certain way, that's a good problem to have, right?
Right. Yeah. So it's quite interesting. So now you know that a lot of people will actually listen to that. And I was actually looking at the statistics like last year, and we were #1 in the video game section on podcasts at Spotify in Hong Kong.
That's awesome.
How did that happen? I don't know, but it happened, And yeah, so
okay. That's pretty awesome. I did not know that.
So yeah, so of course it has negative side effects, like you have people from Africa asking you questions like, hey, do you need somebody for post-production and stuff? I'm like, yeah, it's nice to know that your brand is making into corners of Africa, but I don't anticipate the spam coming with it,
Okay.
Yeah,
I get it.
It's kind of a thing, yeah, but anyway, yeah, it's good to have a normal guest for chance, because often we have guests that nobody else had, I was for 10 years I was trying to get a tech toy, and and
I'll admit it's easier to get tech toy if you speak Portuguese.
Right, yes, because my friends in Brazil at that time, I didn't have any gaming friends, and everybody was like, forget it, nobody speaks English over here. And I was like, but that's not very realistic. I don't think that somebody from Tectoy would go around to America and Japan doing all the Sega deals with a translator in his back pocket.
Yeah, I get it. I get
translating everything between English and Portuguese. That's not very realistic. So it turns out that Stefano Arnold, who actually founded the company, is fluent in English. Not a problem at all, So it was just the problem of getting him directly rather than going through the official channels, where, as you said, when I would call, they wouldn't speak English. Or when I email, they would give me a number and say like, call us next week, we will speak English with you. And then somebody answered the phone and was like, are you kidding me? So it was hilarious. Really difficult. It was really difficult.
That's actually hilarious.
Yeah. So and now we have done all that. Now we have done all those interviews, and it's over with. And it's also interesting how sometimes we predicted the future. For example, last year we interviewed St1ka, one of the biggest composers, And then I was like, hey, have you heard about Tempest Rising, who's actually trying to continue the history and taking over the church from Command and Conquer. And then it turned out like a month ago, it was actually announced that he's doing the soundtrack of the game. So he actually knew of the existence. But of course, during the interview, he wouldn't be allowed to say like, "Yeah, I was hired to make the soundtrack."
You know? Actually, I remember I once spoke with Audie, the guy from Norway, from the
Digital
Retro,
Foundry. Yeah.
and he once told me something very interesting. If you interview developers from Japan, like musicians, programmers, artists, their take is basically, yeah, it was my job. Like I have no memory of that. It was just another job for me. It was just another project. Like they could be working on the best game of all time, and they were like, it was a job. I didn't care.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I was actually interviewing David Crane, but that was an email interview, by the way. And he totally admitted, like, at this time, it was just, he didn't know he was doing history and making the best Ghostbusters game for the console. He said he just had, like, a ready-made game. He changed some sprites and then made it a Ghostbusters game, and hey, it became a selling hit, you know.
Damn. That's amazing.
He didn't know he was doing history at that time. And also interestingly, I did also do a text interview with Chris Creek, one of the composer from Epix and Lucasfilm games, and he actually told me that when he did the music for such games in the early 80s, he had no idea about NTSC and PAL and the speed differences and stuff.
Wow, yeah. I didn't know that.
He had no idea that in Europe his music would play too slow and stuff. You know?
Yeah.
They only did some fixes to make sure the game wouldn't crash because of timing issues of the graphic and IRQ rendering and stuff. But for the music, like, it plays good enough, you know.
That's amazing. I had no idea.
Yeah, and so that's really why I love to interview people that are normally not common guests in other podcasts and so on. Like you have people that have been interviewed 1,000 times already.
Yeah. I get it. I'll admit, it's been a long time since I've been interviewed for a podcast, but there was
a period. So? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it. But there was a period, I don't remember when exactly, when suddenly I was getting a lot of interviews out of nowhere, and I'll admit, I found myself just saying the same things over and over again.
So when was that actually approximately?
I don't remember actually. I'm gonna say 4 years ago because it was before my exponential growth. So
before the Peprium disaster.
Oh no. My exponential growth was way after that, to be honest. The Peprium was popular, but it was a flash in the pan. I went back to my normal low numbers right after. So
really, okay,
yeah. Peprium did very little to grow the channel, to be honest.
It was a peak and then it went down again.
Yeah, it was a peak and then it went down again. Peprium did very little to grow the channel, to be honest.
I have to admit, normally before we invite guests and so on, I'm making research. But with you, I was like, I know this guy for years. I don't have to do any research. So I was like, you know, pretty easy peasy. I didn't know that it was just a peak. For me personally, you have been big from that point.
I get it.
Interesting.
But yeah, Peprium just never really it was cool. Like I remember I even got I remember like GameSec even mentioned the documentary once in a video. But honestly, it was very much just a flash in the pan. The channel went right back to doing what it was doing before.
And the problem is now that the game is out, the documentary is actually not valid anymore at some point, right?
Yeah. And it's not
age well.
It's not really relevant, to be honest. There's also that. Like I like the game, but I'm glad I have Peprium behind me, I guess.
Oh, Oh. So if there was another game, would you cover it again, or is watermelon as a topic over for you in general?
Probably over. Like if I like the game, I would include it in a future video, but which would include other games. Like that style of video, the closest I've come to replicating it was Wizardry, which was also a series that I really wanted people to relearn because it's a very important gaming series that the gaming world has just seemingly forgotten about. But other than that, I guess not really. It's a period of. I guess part of the issue is when you do documentary style videos, you're always going to called out because you've forgotten something, and the issue is they require a lot of effort, a lot of research, and when they call you out, you're like, fuck, they're right. They're right. I didn't mention that. And at some point, they're just like, you know what? I'm just going to talk about games because it's easier. I like it. It's positive. It's just my opinions. I'm just kind of done with, for the most part, with documentary style videos.
No, let me try to remember. Wizardry, isn't that one of those games that were done in the 70s already?
Early 80s. It was by St1ka in 1981 for the Apple II. And it basically was the forefather of the JRPG, basically. It was huge in Japan, pretty popular in the West, but now it's completely forgotten in the West. Although I'm very happy that my video did so well. And it's getting a bit of a resurgence now because there's a remake out. There's an anime that's very popular and very strongly inspired by Wizardry. So thankfully, it seems I'm at the cusp of something of a revival.
Well, I totally confused it with another game.
Oh, maybe Ultima?
Because I remember that we once interviewed Brenda Romero, and she also worked on
Brenda Romero worked on Wizardry, yes.
Oh, no, it is that game actually.
Yes, she worked on Wizardry. She was one of the founding mothers in this case.
So I was correct. That is that game. Okay.
Yes, it's a very important RPG that is basically forgotten in the West.
Now I have to admit something that I never told to anybody, and I believe it in this podcast because it's an interesting story. When I made the plan to interview Brenda and John Romero, the first offer was, let's do the interview together. And I said, no, I want to make the interview with each of you separately to spotlight your careers independently and equally.
Okay.
Which actually was a mistake because the interview with John Romero was happening within 2 weeks. And he was like, okay, you got 30 minutes. Let's roll.
Yeah.
And then people were commenting on the video version of the interview saying, like, you should have asked this question and that question and this question, that question. I'm like, man, I only got 30 minutes. And actually to make the interview with Brenda Romero took us 5 years. Because she was like, I got no time. No time.
Here's the thing, though.
Next summer, next autumn.
If you had gotten both at the same time, you could have seen their synergy together, which is not something you often see in interviews. And you could have used that, in my opinion.
Yeah. So you also think it was a mistake to put down the first offer?
But sorry, can you repeat that?
I mean, so it was a mistake to put down the first offer.
Yeah, I think you should have taken it. Sorry.
Yeah. The reason why I did actually, there is actually a real reason behind it, because Brenda Romero had a speech in an event called Women for Gaming. But the whole conference would talk about the importance of women in game development. And she always says in her daily life, everybody refers to her as the woman of John Romero. wife of John Romero, but in fact, she was way earlier involved in video games development
exactly.
than him.
And it must suck because she has a very enviable career, and yet people treat her like she lives in the shadow of her husband, which makes no sense.
Which is actually the other way around, because she has the wider history, the earlier entry point than John himself. John is just known for, well, id Software and Doom, you know. He's the Doom guy. So, and this is while under this, knowing this, that she said she didn't like this this behavior of her career, this handling of her career, like it's not as important as John. That is why I said, like, no, I want to interview you separately. Because I didn't want to recreate the negative experience by interviewing them both together. That was actually the reason behind it.
I get it.
Yeah. And in the end, unfortunately, the audio is pretty bad because she used a very horrible Bluetooth headset. But the interview itself, once you can overlook the audio issues, it went brilliant.
Okay.
Brilliant interview. So she made up for the short 30 minutes John Romero had, but she totally made up for that. It's totally amazing to listen to her experiences, and it's so unique to have somebody like, yeah, I got a job as a video game developer by meeting somebody in the woman's toilet.
That's amazing.
Like in the bathroom. Like, hey, we have this open position as a developer for a video game. Are you interested? Like, yeah, why not? You know, like, woo, okay. That's also how you can start a career. You know, it's like straight off a Hollywood movie. You know, so
that's amazing.
yeah. So anyway, that was why I said, like, nah, I want to do it separately. I mean, in the end, it worked out. I had to wait 5 years, but. Finally made it happen, and yeah, and once we made the appointment, her secretary made really sure that it's happening. Is it happening tomorrow? Can we confirm the time? Like, yeah, it's really happening, and stuff. So yeah. So they were really after us after we got this time window. So anyway, but anyway, that's not something you do. You don't really interview pioneers of video games.
Yeah, I get it. Like I said, it's just, I don't know. I think the way she's treated is when Romero's treated is, it's kind of shameful, I guess.
She married the wrong guy, right?
No, but like he's not at fault. Like, okay, he's not at fault either. But at some point, people have to like look at the things she did, and she was very good at it. She was very influential.
Right. Yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah, I mean, that is the difference between you and me and other people.
Yeah.
I'm always looking at the importance of people for the video game industry as a whole, and the history of computing and video games and so on.
Definitely.
If you talk to other people, it's like it's a waste of time. Why would you even want to preserve those stories? In 30 years, they will be all dead anyway, which makes it even more important.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In fact, one thing I've seen recently is that a lot of the people who worked for like classic Sega are now dying off, and there's no way to get new information off of them because they're dying from like just last month, one of the person who made the tools for composers for the Mega Drive died. So there's no way to get any more information out of that because he died. He's dead.
Wow. I mean, it has a name, right? This composing environment for the Mega Drive.
Gems. It's called Gems.
Gems, yeah. It's famous because it's so horrible.
See, I don't think it was horrible, but I think it was badly used because there are good games with music for it. But Yeah, I don't know what it is, but a lot of Western developers just didn't know how to use the Mega Drive sound chip. I guess even with the tools.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's I don't think people realize that the longer we take to interview those people, the more the more likely they are to die, to lose them off. You know.
That's also why I'm probably the last person who interviewed Ralph Baer, the inventor of home video game consoles.
Mm-hmm.
And a few weeks after I interviewed him, he actually died of cancer. That was pretty tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this became my most famous interview actually, because I was the last person interviewing this guy, and also the longest interview. We made a full interview, and people were like, "This poor guy is sitting in front of a video camera at 91," and I was like, "I don't think he is poor. He liked to be interviewed for an hour."
Yeah.
You know.
I get it.
And probably at this time he knew this would be the final interview or something, but of course the others wouldn't. But yeah. So was actually quite interesting. It's also interesting to see the perspective of things. You know, when I interviewed Joe Lewandowski, you know the guy who did the Atari Dick?
Yeah. I do.
In 2015, there was actually my English. Exhibited.
Yeah. Exhibit,
exactly. In Frankfurt, in the Frankfurt Film Museum, and this exhibit was film and games. And so how video games got into movies and movies got into video games. And he actually had a press conference about the Atari Dick. And I remember when I was coming in with my Scene World T-shirt at the press conference, and everybody was in the tough clothes and very dressed, formal and stuff, and you know, and the cameras and the microphones and so on. And I stepped in. He was like, "Oh, finally a gamer is entering the press conference," you know. And so hey, yeah. And we also made two parts of this Atari Dick. And the first part is like 3 hours because he had so many stories about this event. It's amazing. So sometimes it's just a matter of opportunity, you know. Yeah. And it's interesting because he said that this is the only interview he ever did. He always put down any other interviews. So I actually got contacted by Spanish TV. They wanted to make a documentary about the Atari Dick and have some comments from Joe Lewandowski. So I put them in touch, but he would never reply to them.
Damn, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so actually Spanish television was contacting me, but he wouldn't do an exception, even not for Spanish television. So in the end, they released a documentary on TV, but without any comments from Joe Lewandowski.
That's pretty cool. That is pretty cool.
So to this day, those two interviews with him in our podcast turns out to be exclusive.
I mean, it's good, right? I mean, at the very least, you end up having an exclusive, so that's gotta be good for the podcast.
Right. But in the end, how many people are going to watch it? Probably at some point when this project dies off for some reason, for one or another, then people might detect it. You know?
Yeah, it's true. I get it.
And like, wow, there used to be this publication that we totally missed all those past 20 years. And now they stopped, and now somebody discovered it, you know?
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I mean, we got really 2 hours off here. Amazing.
I think it's pretty good.
You have a lot of opinions. You have a lot to tell us.
I mean, I really love retro gaming and a lot of opinions on retro games. And I guess after you've gotten so many negative comments on YouTube, you just kind of learn to unleash those opinions.
Do you get a lot of negative comments?
So many.
Really?
Every YouTuber does, I think. Every YouTuber does.
And what is your your reason?
I think the one I get the most that most people do not get is related to my accent, because I get those.
Oh, come on! Who cares?
But regarding to my content, it's always no. Your opinion is wrong. It's. I think your opinion is wrong is the most common comment, the most common negative comment every YouTuber gets, in my opinion.
And why would your opinion be wrong? It's just your perspective from a European.
It's just YouTube comments. I like making fun of those people, so I enjoy it. I enjoy snapping back. So if you're going to be a YouTuber, you're going to have to accept that you're going to get a lot of negative comments. It's unavoidable.
So is it like from Americans thinking they are the pinnacle of the world?
No. It's worldwide. That one's not related to the. Okay, to be fair, I think most people who complain about the accent are American. But when it comes to having the wrong opinion, it's just that one's general. It's there's no one country or one nationality.
Interesting. Yeah, the problem we are having sometimes is I had to block people from commenting on the channel because we were accused of some interviews being fake.
Oh.
Because nobody else got to interview them, so they must be fake, For example, we got Mr. Awesome, one of those pioneers on high score gaming for arcade games, and they were like, is this two-parted interview, is that fake, or did this phone interview really happen? I'm like, yeah, it really happened. And then they were starting a whole argument, and at some point I was like, okay, block and delete. Really, what else can you do?
Best thing you could have done.
Yeah.
It's the best thing.
What's the point? Why should I let them roll on? That's actually the first thing that happened when we did the Chris Quick interview and the David Crane interview. We released both interviews in the same issue of the Disc magazine, and the first reaction was like, are those interviews fake, or did you really talk to those people?
Yeah.
The first reaction is always, it must be fake.
I think that if people act like that, you just might as well, I like making fun of them, because if they act like that, you're never going to get them on your side, so you might as well anger them.
Yeah, I mean, it would make so much more work to make up a fake interview that sounds realistic.
Yeah,
than actually talking to the people. Then I could spend the same amount talking to people like you, for example, who is actually willing and easy to get.
Yeah, completely agreed.
Yeah, but of course, those hard to get people are also interesting, because they are not going to make this interview a second time anytime soon.
Yeah, I get
because it took you years to convince them to make this interview, especially when you had situations like Billy Mitchell and his and his Donkey Kong cheating and stuff, and you had people for like 3 years. No, I'm not doing interviews. No way.
Yeah, I get what you mean. That one. I get that getting some people must be difficult, and I think it also comes down with the energy. Like, you can usually tell if the person you're talking to you're going to vibe with them or not, I guess.
Now the question is, do you have to vibe with the person to make good interviews?
You don't have to vibe, but it helps. I think if you don't vibe with them, it's going to look very robotic, I think, or going to look very, very stiff. Whereas if you vibe with them, it stops being an interview and it becomes a conversation, I guess.
Yeah, sometimes you never know how it turns out. I mean, you could also hang up and say, "What a douchebag!" That's the last time I talked to this.
It's possible. I mean, it's definitely possible.
You know, you can't look behind people's head.
True. Very true. Very true.
That's actually the problem here. But I knew we have a history together due to the Paprium disaster, so I knew, like, okay, he might actually be interested in that. You know.
Yeah, I get it.
Awesome. So I will definitely make sure to release this thing this week.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. And I will send you a link. I don't know if you think this is good enough to share it. Hopefully.
Oh, sure. Shoot me a link. Absolutely. Shoot me a link.
Awesome. Yeah.
I can definitely share it on my Twitter, for example.
Now that would be the next question. Where can people find your stuff?
Well, YouTube is the best one. Just write St1ka and you'll find it. St1ka. If not on YouTube, Twitter, or X as it's called now, is also a good place. I spend a lot of time there. After that, you got the usual ones: Facebook, Instagram, whatever. But usually YouTube and Twitter are the main ones.
Is there a meaning behind St1ka?
Yes. St1ka actually comes from the Portuguese word estica, which means stretch, which is what my friends call me because I'm very tall. I am
190.
191. Or 6'3" in American terms, I guess.
Ooh.
So I'm pretty tall. So although I also used to be thinner, now I'm more fat. So the stretch thing doesn't work so as well anymore.
So you grew horizontally.
Yes, I now grow horizontally.
Amazing. Yeah, awesome. So yeah, looking forward to see what's coming next in your podcast career.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, not a problem. Thanks for agreeing to be here, and hope we stay in touch. And
same here.
Perhaps we make a follow-up at some point.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Perhaps there will be another interesting topic to brag about, you know?
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, hey, it's not as late for you as for me. It's 9 p.m.
9 p.m. Right? Yes.
Yeah, for me it's 10. It's almost night time here. That's the good thing about Portugal.
It's still day here, believe it or not.
Ooh, yeah, it's getting dark here. That's why I have the light on.
Makes sense.
Right. Okay.
This is all natural light.
Awesome. Yeah.
Anyway, my dudes, anytime you want to talk, just shoot me a message.
Awesome. Was really good to talk in person finally, not only emailing.
Yeah, I get it.
Or X-tweeting or posting or whatever.
Yeah.
Super interesting. Yeah. All right. Have a good one. I will let you know when we get this out, right?
Thank you, and you too. See you, man.
Bye.
See ya.